Good morning, everybody. I want to call to order the February MTA Board Meeting. Let's hear the safety announcement and then from our public speakers.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. Danny, public speakers.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MTA's February board meeting public comment session. Today, we will hear from public speakers, both remotely and in person. We have 22 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker today will be Christopher Greif, followed by Ian Matthews.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif, and just to let everyone know, accessibility is important to everyone. I know MTA, you guys are pushing, and we are so happy to see the 149th open elevator in the Bronx. I want to thank you so much because the Bronx community and the people with the councils of people with disability are extremely happy because now they don't have to go all the way into Washington Heights to connect to another bus to finally get on the accessible station. And thank God those buses are moving. But I do want to make clear that we need the congestion price for people with disabilities and seniors. It is extremely important why we need it because we need the elevators, the ramps, and everything with accessibility needs. We just need it from the Long Island Railroad to Metro North, from the buses to the accessorite, from the accessorite to the subways. Everything we need to make sure we're fully funding. And let's pray that we never see a fare hike or ever see cuts on buses or trains ever again. Because a lot of people who travel, we need that for a reason. And we need to make clear that the fare invasion in any borough, or it doesn't matter if it's upstate New York or Long Island, we need to be clear that we need to make sure that MTA Police and NYPD are working with the community, which they are. We have to work together as one and stay strong and united. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Ian Matthews, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
All right. Hi there. My name is as there was stuff I forgot to mention in the last board meeting, like service on the B line in the Bronx in the morning rush hour is horrible. For a local train. The D should be making local stops in the Bronx when this happens, which really it barely does. Another thing I'm grateful to see, I'm glad to see more NYPD officers on the platforms and stations in Manhattan. However, I'd like to see more in the Bronx, like on the BD and 4 lines, which I use, where I'm noticing more fare invasion and even people using the bathroom on the platform. More can be done. I want to make the subway safer, so let's make it safe for all of our riders and for transit workers. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Charlton D'Souza, followed by Miriam Fisher.
Good morning, everyone. Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. So what happened to me this morning? I get on the F train and I had to clean the seats because there was feces and urine on the seats. Yeah, welcome to our world. This is the stuff we have to deal with. And while I was doing that, a lady who had tissues with alcohol in it gave it to me. I mean, why do we have to clean the seats? Aren't the cleaners supposed to be doing that? So again, the subway system, I'll say this again, is in crisis because we have homeless individuals sleeping in every car. I've been getting pictures from people all over the system. It's happening. And, we need to get control of the situation, especially with the bed bug stuff, on the trains with people with garbage bags, shopping carts. Once those bugs go inside the heating units, that's it. They're all over the place. And, the bus was clean coming here, so thank God for that. But in terms of safety and security, I'm going to say this again. Our police officers, our transit employees, our cleaners, station agents, conductors, train operators, they need a sense of safety because nobody should be getting mugged, assaulted, or killed on the subway. So starting this week and next week, we'll be out protesting. We're going to be going to elected officials' offices demanding that they prosecute repeat offenders in the subway system and that the district attorneys start prosecuting, that they start holding these people accountable. Because what happens if a transit worker, God forbid, is killed? And remember, we're coming up on the anniversary of Garrett Goebel, who was killed by a shopping cart fire. He was a train operator. So yeah, nobody should have to work in fear. Passengers should be able to come in the system, be okay. But I need all of you board members to back the advocates up on this. We've got to tell the district attorneys, start prosecuting. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Miriam Fisher, followed by Jason Anthony.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yep.
Thank you. I'm here to speak for the community of people with disabilities and seniors in Chelsea requesting an elevator at 23rd Street and 6th Avenue. I've already submitted a written request. I am aware of the need for the transit deserts of the outer boroughs, but Chelsea is an accessibility desert. From East River to the Hudson River, there are 5 subways, only one accessible on Park Avenue South. We can't wait 30 years until 2055 for an elevator. This is an accessibility desert. When I needed an emergency MRI after back surgery, I couldn't get from Chelsea to the MRI center in the village by public transportation. I have endorsements by the local elected, Derek Botcher, Brad Holman Siegel, Tony Simone, and they've been sent to Jano Lieber. On the same physical block as the station, 6th Avenue, is Stellis Manor, which is a residence for people with visual impairments and other disabilities. 500 residents. They were very enthusiastic and wanted to send hundreds of letters to the MTA. I said I would just list it as another endorsement. On the same physical block, in 2018, was extensive renovation without an elevator, which is now against regulations. I have a long list of endorsements by senior centers in Chelsea, from the Greater New York Council for the Blind, from Hudson Guild, Penn South, Newark, 12 community block associations, the Transportation Committee of Chelsea.
Please conclude your remarks.
And many others, which I've already been sent. Please consider the accessibility desert on 23rd and 6th Avenue in the next
Thank you for your
capital.
remarks. Our next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Alita Dupree.
Good morning, Jano. Good morning, General Counsel Page. Good morning, Rich, Rob, Kathy, Demetrius, Frank, Pat, and everybody else in the full board. Jason Anthony here from the Long Island Railroad 88 Task Force. Newsflash. Governor Murphy announced yesterday in his State of the State that he will impose a corporate transit fee of 2.5% to every corporation in the state of New Jersey who will be earning $800 million a year to give to New Jersey Transit Corporation. But my question is, will this solve the fiscal cliff that they have right now? No. Do we see the same type of transparency that Kevin Willis show us month after month? No. So my demand is that those people show up in force or speak over the phone on Tuesday, March 12th, starting at 10 a.m., and demand New Jersey Transit Corporation to once and for all settle the lawsuit that they have against the MTA, that we could have congestion pricing once and for all. This is nonsense, because with this lawsuit in place, we won't have accessibility, we won't have modernized signals, we won't have anything. So I'm asking everybody, attend the next New Jersey Transit Board meeting, because I'll be attending by phone and I'll be doing the same work that I've been doing for months. I'll see you next month.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Alita Dupree, followed by Jack Nierenberg.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Jano Lieber and members. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her with Team Folds. It's good to be with you. Hopefully next month I'll see you in person. Next month is my birthday. Lots of things going on. And I'm going to take a different tack here. And I certainly like to put positive energy into my solar-powered virtual podium. And I think often about escalators and buses and electricity. And the system, Darien Stately, which is our subway. I think back to 1976, when my cousin gave me a copy of Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash. And I was listening to it over this weekend in Oakland. And I think back to our system in the 1970s with the graffiti and the broken lights and all kinds of other things. And wondering if Grand Central Terminal was going to be knocked down. And those were hard times. And I share these things not just here, but I went to BART meetings in Oakland, and I refer to BART as being the people's system. And how do we get to where we need to be? I'm going to say this, that I believe that congestion pricing is absolutely essential, especially for me, as a person with profound disability, that congestion pricing is a program that speaks to me and includes me and gives me hope. Sometimes Jerry Rafferty's Baker Street sounds melancholy, but hearing the saxophone solo near the end gives me much reason to be hopeful. Congestion pricing will help us all to be hopeful about the future in our system, a system that I hope to enjoy for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jack Nierenberg, followed by Farhan Sharif.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Jack Nierenberg, the Vice President of Passengers United. And by show of hands, how many of you are ready to pay congestion pricing? Anyone? 0 hands. I find that especially troubling. Why? Because there needs to be, if you want congestion pricing, you want people to pay it, you got to have accountability. And where does accountability start? Right here in this boardroom with you all. And one thing I find especially troubling about the plan, I've already expressed my point on my views on congestion pricing, so I'm not going to go into that right now. But what I find especially troubling is that transit workers are not exempt as part of the contract. It's not in there. So why should anyone in this room be exempt from the plan when those who are actually moving the system and are not fortunate in this same way are paying the fee to get in, especially overnight from transit deserts? It's not okay. So therefore, I'm going to be submitting requests, freedom of information law requests, because there needs to be accountability. And I really want to make sure, I want to see records that people in the executive management, board members, elected officials, and other lobbyists in favor of the plan are actually paying their fair share. It's one thing to expect people to pay it and or seize other people's vehicles for not paying it, but if you all are not paying it yourselves, where's the accountability? So I really want to see records that people who are driving into the city in this boardroom are actually paying their fair share of it themselves. Thank you very much. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Farhan Sharif, followed by John Padula.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. This is actually my first board meeting, and it's really an honor to be here. I am born, bred, and raised here in Queens, New York, and for my whole life, I have relied on the transit system, from going to school, going to work, and particularly, I am here because I am not happy with the transit system that we have here. And that's because whenever I go into the subways, I have this fear of possibly falling onto the tracks, fear of my safety being in danger, my life being endangered in the subways. And 3 years ago, the city had said that we are starting a pilot program of trying to install barriers between the platform and the tracks. And only for 3 years later, the MTA to start the pilot program, but just putting casual barriers between the platform and the tracks. That doesn't resolve anything. So I am here because I want to sound the alarm on as to why the MTA is raising the prices of our fares and trying to impose more prices on us to pay when they don't take our issues seriously. It's like you guys are more willing to upgrade the turnstile, harder for us to jump over, but you won't invest more in trying to install barriers between the platform and the tracks. So many modern countries have done this already, and I've been to many modern cities which have installed them. It's time the MTA starts taking this into consideration, starts installing these barriers so that, commuter lives can be protected. Nobody has to fall onto the tracks accidentally or on purpose. Nobody has to lose their lives while going to work or going to school. And I think that's not fair for me. And I demand that this MTA board from this day on seriously consider installing barriers between the platform and the tracks. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be John Padula, followed by Vincent Padula.
Talk about a 1-2 punch. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula, and I'm a supervisor with Educational Vision Services from New York City Public Schools. I'm also the newly elected chair of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. You often hear me say never to mistake disability for inability. And as a blind person, my barriers to the environment, my challenges are way different, though, than folks with other disabilities. But I want to be careful whether what group we're talking about or what group there's a concern for or issue with, that we never pit one group against the other. And this is why it brings me great joy when I hear leadership actually bring up and discuss initiatives that do go beyond elevators and escalators and more comprehensive layered approach. We had great presentations last month. And Monday, it was very excited to hear that we can actually expect new software for Access-a-Ride sooner rather than later. I was a bit despondent to hear, though, that news on Phase 3 shouldn't be expected until summer when we were originally told March. Look, whether I'm here screaming about the insufferable, archaic nature of Access-a-Ride, whether I'm indignant about the lack of meaningful on-demand, whether I'm irate over the overwhelming amount of unannounced announcements on buses and subways, I realize the bottom line is funding. The bottom line is always the bottom line. Now, this is where I'm supposed to talk about congestion pricing, but I can't because, unfortunately, it's become too political. So I'm going to save my comments for after hours because right now I represent my employer. But it has become too political. I'm just going to emphasize we need to be fair with those funds. We need to be equitable. And transparency breeds trust. transparency breeds trust. We need to be transparent with folks what's happening with those funds. I will, again, save my comments for after hours. So my name is John Padula. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Vincent Padula, followed by Patrick Condren.
Good morning, everyone. Board members, Vincent Padula here from the U of T. Facing the history behind all this and following John, I like to look back. In 2017, two things happened. I received my first service animal. Secondly, the on-demand or the e-hail program started. And until last August, I relied primarily on the e-hail program. Apart from 3 filings with the TLC that the drivers wouldn't let me onto the vehicle with my service animal, then they were fined $500. It really put a kibosh to things. And other places like Uber realized service animals are a thing. Access-a-ride, traditional service is not as aware. And so now I was told by Chris P., look, this e-hail was a great thing, but it's a supplementary thing. Go back to the traditional service. So I did. And so I'm getting kicked out of vehicles. I'm being discriminated against. So I asked you, we were told it was too expensive. Now, I'm a blind citizen. I pay my taxes. We can afford to pay $9 million for the new migrants, and we are now a sanctuary city, but we're neglecting our disabled population when we have an on-demand program that did work, that was economical, needed to be policed. You failed in your police, so shame on you, MTA. You failed. You didn't police it. But now I'm being asked to use inferior service for more money and being discriminated against. And the answer to me from Chris was, oh, well, we can't guarantee not having shared ride. Even if it discriminates against me, Chris, how do you feel being told you can't come into the vehicle because you have an animal, and drivers telling me my dog is dirty? I don't get that from Uber. I don't get that from the public, but I get that from Access-a-Ride. So when is this e-hail program happening, please? I'd like to know. And I'd like to have a program that I can use consistently, not as a supplementary program, a usable program that was usable for 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Patrick Condren, followed by Andy Pollack.
Good morning, Chair Lieber and members of the board. Nice to see you today. Thank you. Once again, my name is Patrick Condren, Bus Coalition of New York City, which is the private bus operators here in New York, which includes a variety of groups, West Point Trailways, Adirondack Trailways, Academy Bus, Coach USA, Hampton Jitney, companies that contribute to the National Transit Database, contribute to the regular route service here in New York City, and again, also participate in the Public Transportation Safety Board of New York State. Having said that, we have stated before, and we state again, we support any and all efforts for congestion mitigation, including congestion pricing programs that work. I appropriately, with exemptions, as identified, thank you, of private bus carriers that are contracted with the city and state of New York, and/or with a government contract, and pointing out to you clearly that those carriers are not always under contract. There are a number of companies that are not directly under contract, but provide regular route service. I'm here to point out that buses mitigate congestion. We do support this. I mean, the logic is there. The traffic is created by private automobiles, excessive use of hired vehicles, excessive use of truck deliveries, et cetera, and 55 people on any bus, whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. And public entities such as the MTA also contribute to the National Transit Database, participate in Public Transportation Safety Board groups and programs that are generated for the riding public. I'll repeat, the riding public is the same riding public, regardless of who owns and operates the bus. Notwithstanding that, it was 100 years ago, 120 years ago, though it be the subways, even the bridges and tunnels, many of them, not all, were privately owned and operated, and certainly the bus companies were. Notwithstanding that, we're here to support, participate, and once again request a clear identification for exemption for buses as identified by the American Bus Association, the United Motor Coach Association, identifying that 55 people on a bus minimizes congestion. And we respectfully ask you to consider that again, and we're available anytime to talk about it. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Andy Pollock, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning, Andy Pollock for the record, Passengers United. So, I'm going to discuss my trip on the Q46 bus yesterday. First things first, at Long Island Jewish, Unit 8841 comes on. The good news is there was a sign for the Queens Bus redesign on board the unit. But guess what? We left the hospital early again. We were supposed to leave at 2:27 and we left at 2:24. So that pattern is still continuing. Second issue I noticed, Union Turnpike and Lakeville Road, the bus stop has tape all over it. And this also is a bus stop for the N25. So I don't know if MTA controls that bus stop or if Nassau County has leverage over that bus stop. And one more thing I want to mention, somebody gets on board the bus, and let's just say that a teenage girl was name called on board the bus, and the person gets off at 251st Street, and an announcement is said on the bus, see something, say something. We can't see or say something, because if we call the police, guess what? With bail reform, the same criminals are going to get locked up, taken to jail, and then what happens is they're let back out in the streets. So that's how my experience was in the Q46. One more thing before I conclude my remarks, congestion pricing. The marketing you guys are doing for it, I noticed that the traffic in the picture was from the 2000s because there was an RTS bus, an old school Lincoln Town car, and a Ford Crown Victoria in the picture. Come on, guys. We know Toyota Camrys are the most used taxi fleet in the city right now. So that's just a criticism. And I'm going to have more to say about congestion pricing at the hearing that I'm going to be speaking at on Friday. So thank you for letting me speak this month, and I'll be back in March.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Lisa Daglian, followed by Mike Howard.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. This week, riders, contractors, and the businesses that depend on them gained chilling insight into the consequences of further delaying congestion pricing. As if the $20 billion that traffic costs our region's economy every year wasn't enough, bad faith lawsuits threaten to derail Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway, bus electrification projects, signal upgrades on the A, B, C, D, F, and M trains, and ADA accessibility at 20-plus stations in all 5 boroughs, stretching from Wakefield to 241st Street to Parsons Boulevard to Clifton on Staten Island Rail, affecting millions of riders. The Long Island Railroad and Metro North are not exempt, with delays to projects, including getting M9A rail cars. Come on, it's time to sink those M3s already. This isn't just a New York City problem. 23,000 jobs and millions of dollars across New York State are at risk. Pro-traffic advocates, professional protagonists, Twitter doomsday sayers, and Insta-reelers are concocting sky-is-falling scenarios about how cleaner air and better transit will spend the end of the region that is literally run on transit for over a century. New York isn't going anywhere, but neither are New Yorkers unless we fund the state of good repair work needed to keep our legacy system moving. Hey, New Jersey and all the Chicken Littles out there, cut it out already. Last year, Governor Hochul and the legislature made historic investments in the MTA's operations. But now we're at a crossroad. We can either keep up the progress or blow a $15 billion hole in the capital budget, return to the bad old days like the all-too-recent summer of hell. That's why it's crucial that riders' voices are heard during the upcoming congestion pricing public hearing starting tomorrow. For those who can't make it, we've made it easy to submit comments to the MTA by going to our website at pcac.org/bettertransit. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Mike Howard, followed by Tanisha Larabors.
Good morning, everyone. Happy 2024. Blessed to be back. And I just want to say this. From what I just heard earlier, from some of the comments, more cameras inside of today's current train need to be installed like R62s, R62As, R143s, R142s, R142As, R160s, and R179s. R179. All need to be installed in case something happens. And you know what else? I am sick every time I ride the A train, because I live near the A train. I live in Southeast Queens by the A train, which is Far Rockaway Mott Avenue. Every time I travel, I see R46s like up to 10 in a row going out there. Y'all need to step it up and send more technology trains to Far Rockaway, which is R179 and R211s. You know what I mean? And I'm going to say a little bit about these buses. One day I was in downtown Brooklyn. I saw a few articulated new flyers on the B38 without DIS system. Some of them has them, some of them doesn't. More DIS system needs to be installed in those buses that doesn't have it yet from 2013 to 2018. It needs to be installed. It needs to be installed quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Tanisha Larabors, followed by Nia Rollins.
Good morning. My name is Tasha Larabors. I work for Center for the Independence of the Disabled, New York. I'm an advocate for the disabled. Once again, I want to talk about Access-a-Ride, but this time recertification. I've spoken to a number of people with obvious disabilities. They use Access-a-Ride the first year, but the following year when they go to recertify, they get denied. And when they read the comments are very interesting. I've heard comments from psychologists saying, oh, this person does not have such and such. Also, having folks that are blind who have to go for recertification to once again prove that you're disabled. I really would love to understand the whole process of recertification. If this is something that has to be done yearly, but you have an obvious disability. You have doctors' letters that state that the person's disability is permanent. So that is something that really needs to be looked at, because it really does not make sense for someone to have to go every year. 1 minute you get the service, the following year you get denied. So please, take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Nia Rollins, followed by Jean Ryan.
Hello. So I just wanted to speak about the Q10 bus new proposal for South Ozone Park. They plan to completely remove the Q10 from Rockaway Boulevard and 130th Street. That bus has been going to it was on 131st Street up until about 2010. So for about 40 years. It says the plan is to make the bus experience more efficient, which I don't believe it will. Members of the community are going to have to take 2 to 3 buses now to get to their destination. I don't understand why they would remove the bus without letting anybody in the neighborhood know. They have the signs on the bus, but no one pays attention to that. If a person in my neighborhood hadn't told me, we would have just come out one day with the bus completely gone. It is going to displace thousands of people in the neighborhood. This is a school district. Many families put their children on that bus to go to school by themselves. It's completely unfair. It's going to be a financial burden. We're going to have to take 2 to 3 buses now to get to the trains. It's going to be more time consuming. The buses that you guys now want us to take, it's going to be a hardship, because we have to think about it. It's already the people who take those buses, and now you're putting the people who take the Q10 bus on those buses. It's going to be congestion. We're going to have to take more time to go to work because the buses are going to be too full. And on the MTA website, it stated that you guys held over 40 events, and there was only one event in South Ozone Park in 2022. So you guys had one event 2 years ago, and you decided to take away a major bus route that even goes to the airport, saying that you guys received 3,800 comments. In all of Queens, there are over 2 million people in Queens, and you guys decided to make a huge decision like that with 3,800 comments. That lets me know that you guys did not really do your outreach. Nobody knew about this, and I just want to say this is completely unfair, and I hope that you guys will take another look at this because it's going to be a huge problem for the members of South Ozone Park.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jean Ryan, followed by Yuki Endo.
Hi, my name is Jean Ryan, and I am president of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, DIA for short. We need more elevators as well as a solution of the gap problem for wheelchair users, especially motorized wheelchair users, so we will be able to use the subway. Motorized wheelchair users can't do wheelies. Our chairs weigh too much and they're not flexible. But we also need good and thorough maintenance of the elevators and all that entails. Fix the elevators, sign on the dotted line, and settle the case. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Yuki Endo, followed by Bibi Shah. Yuki, we can't hear you.
Incorporating because of the MTA Port Authority. I'd say thank you for building the RT11 and 9 and 8 plus PA5. I had a great memory riding on this cars. I am grateful for MTA expanding the access station on the subway train. I do not support congestion pricing because of the taxi rideshare drivers were after long distance bus driver. All this should be allowed to enter for free, including sightseeing buses. And they need to enforce pre-building at the subway station, including Staten Island, St. George. I'm glad to see the subway barriers on the subway platform on the Blair, I think. If the congestion pricing happen via rush hour, which is the B-line, BX, and 4C, Whitebanks Midtown bus will be affected by this bus cost higher than the anti-coach buses and use network. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Bibi Shah, followed by Iris Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Bibi Shah. I'm here to represent the people in South Ozone Park. I would like to let you know of an incident that happened in South Ozone Park where the Q10 Kew Gardens bus was removed in June 2023. I did a petition and I was able to get that bus stop to be reinstated on 130th and Sutter Avenue. But when it was reinstalled on September 26, MTA removed the bus stop on the opposite side of the street, the Q10 JFK going towards JFK. This has caused a lot of struggle for our residents, and it has caused a lot of distress because now residents have to walk far, very far distance. Old and disabled residents have to walk spend double the time to have accessible access to public transportation. When I investigated and asked MTA why they did this, they said it was because of a poor bus ridership in this location, Southern 130th Avenue, which is false information. I also did an investigation and found out because a resident knows someone in MTA and has affiliation with that person, that is why they removed the bus stop. This is very unfair for us because old and disabled residents and all of us have to struggle to get to the bus stop to be able to get to work. Also, another problem that has been affecting our location is that MTA has a new bus redesign plan where they want to take away the Q10 running on 130th and Sutter 130th Street and Rockaway Boulevard. And this is going to cause
Thank you for your
severe
remarks.
hardship.
Our next speaker will be Iris Kelly, followed by Bruce Hain.
Yes. In terms of Long Island Railroad, there's issues about the Brooklyn trains, how they're set up. Since Grand Central came into town, I don't like the way they moved our station, or our trains off of track 3 to 11 and 12. It don't make any sense. Very inconvenient for people coming home from work. They should have the Grand Central shuttle over there, where make it more convenient for people coming on and off, going to the planes. Be easier for them. And then why is it they have the they took off the digital 6 and 7 train times? It was great for people who my height to be able to read it. I can't read from up in the high top. You took that away from us. Then accessibility for the Brooklyn trains. We had our own trains coming from Atlantic Terminal going to Long Island. We didn't have to go switching all the time into the Jamaica Station. It's not fair to us. It made inconvenience for all of us. And then in terms of accessoride, why should we have to have problems about getting rides? Especially when we have a problem getting home at night, the emergency comes up. We shouldn't have to have problems getting a ride. They're having too many other problems with this. It's saying, oh, is this going to be the second trip? Is this your second trip? Yes or no? That's not right. Because these emergencies do come up, whether it's first ride or second ride, we have to go. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Oh,
Others.
thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Bruce Hain, followed by our final speaker for today, Michael Ring.
Good morning, Board and Jano. Well, I'm fit to be tied because I've tried just about every way to get through to you. I mean, you're the fiduciaries, right? You're supposed to know things about building things having to do with rail. And we see this picture in the book of the excavations that have started where you're going to build this ridiculous bridge. It's lunacy. You don't want to do that now. You do it. I've tried everything. I've given you a stack of papers that cost me $50 and lots of running around. And I don't think you read it. There was a paragraph that was entirely underlined. And it said, you know, you have to do something. You have to get in touch with me unless you want it to be respondeat superior. We'll try something like that because that's what you've got to do something about it. You can't go on like this. You know, that tunnel, you have this doltish, what is it, SVP. And saying things that are obsolete. You say something is obsolete, whole ranks of double slip switches are obsolete? What do you mean? It's one of the most elegant mechanical solutions ever devised. And they have quite a good angle, 4.9 degrees, I think. What are you trying to do to that? What are you doing? What is the platform doing there? It's got to be removed. You've got to do something about it. And you're the fiduciaries, so you'd better get going.
Please conclude your remarks.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry it's come to this.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next and final speaker will be Michael Ring.
Good morning. My name is Michael Ring. For anyone who needs a verbal description of my appearance, I'm a 60-year-old white guy wearing a hoodie that says Disabled in Action, the organization I'm representing today. I wasn't sure what I was going to speak about today, and it all came to me as I entered this building. You're probably aware that the people here in the gallery, we enter through the front door, we pass through the security theater, and then we all make couple of left turns, and we go into the elevator designated. It has an elevator operator for us today. I don't know if it happens to everybody. But today, something kind of unusual, but not that extraordinary happened. The elevator I normally go into had a cone in front of it. But it was totally no big deal because the next one was working. And it took me up to the 20th floor. No one's walking up the stairs here today. It occurred to me that the maintenance in the elevators in the subway isn't happening very regularly or as scheduled or as needed, but there's no redundancy. When you're on the subway and the elevator's broken, there's no next elevator to step into. This building has 20 or 30 elevators. If one is broken, you don't even know. But if the elevator is broken across the street, people aren't going home. They have to roll or limp to the next station that's accessible. It's a trip. Here, they're close together. Where I live in Brooklyn, they're far apart. Having a lot of elevators is great, but they have to work and they have to be dependable. Here, they work and they're dependable, but out there in the system, they're not. We don't count on them. So no, people aren't traveling by subway who rely on elevators. So settle the case, maintain the elevators. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Chairman Lieber, that concludes public comment session.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you to the public speakers. I understand from Paige that we're one board member short of a quorum, so we won't be taking action immediately that requires a quorum, but hopefully we're going to be joined by one of our colleagues very, very soon. So with that, let me do my remarks, and then we'll proceed on to a couple of presentations. Thanks to everybody, especially the members of the public, for joining us at this month's meeting of the MTA Board. Where is our... You have a little visual for us? Great. Okay. February is, of course, Black History Month, and we had a significant celebration this week at the MTA. Our guest speaker was a gentleman from the Maryland Transit Administration named Jerome Holm, who's very well known in transit circles for his historical views of the role of African Americans in transit history. And he reminded us of a quote which I thought was really relevant from Dr. King. The full quote is on the screen, but the key point is in the first line. Urban transit systems in most American cities have become a genuine civil rights issue. Dr. King wrote that in 1968, but those words still ring true. I always say that MTA is the engine of equity for the New York region, and right now we're at another historic inflection point for our ability to pursue the equity mission. Last year, Governor Hochul and the state legislature passed a historic budget that enabled the MTA to avoid the fiscal cliff, to maintain and even increase service without service reductions or layoffs, what so many other transit systems are going through. That achievement last year was a huge win for equity, for transit-dependent New Yorkers who are disproportionately middle, working class, and yes, low income. Now we're looking ahead to the next challenge, congestion pricing. In the coming months, we're facing another choice that is really at its bottom all about equity, whether we are going to prioritize the 90% of commuters who use mass transit. We hear a lot about folks who elect to drive to the central business district. They're 10% of the people who come to our central business district, and whether we're going to prioritize cleaner air and safer streets as well. Once that hurdle, the enactment of congestion pricing and its implementation, is overcome, there's the issue of the next capital program, which the board needs to approve by the end of this year. So it's about equity. Are we ready to fund the investments needed to create a truly equitable and sustainable regional transit system, a system that is accessible to all, affordable to all, that serves more neighborhoods and more New Yorkers, a system that truly responds to the civil rights challenge laid down by Dr. King? Transportation equity, in my view, that's what's at stake in the congestion pricing debate and what's going to be at stake in the capital program debate come this fall. We have been preparing for this moment at a time when so many peer agencies are facing cuts. The MTA team has been able to improve and expand service in anticipation of congestion pricing going into effect. The service increase enabled by Governor Hochul cut wait times on 11 lines. On the LIR, the 40% increase in service that we've implemented this year has delivered 300 more daily trains, another 70,000 trips per year since we opened Grand Central Madison. And we have been budgeting to continue increasing bus service as our borough-by-borough bus network redesign is implemented, starting with an investment of $20 million more per year for bus service for Queens. More transit, more buses, more equity. And there's more to come for previously underserved communities. We're building the Metro North Penn Station Access Project so that Amtrak trains, which have been breezing through the Bronx without stopping for over 100 years, aren't the only trains in that part of the Bronx. Instead, we're going to bring new rail service within a mile of 500,000 residents. Co-op City, Parkchester, Morris Park, Hunts Point, new service. We're building 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2 to deliver on that long promise extension to East Harlem, which is New York's most transit-dependent neighborhood, 80 years after it was promised when they were knocking down the 2nd and 3rd Avenue elevated trains. That's what I call transit justice. Now, I know there's also been a lot of talk, rightly so, about safety this week. And I'm pleased at the progress you heard about on Monday from NYPD Transit Chief Michael Kemper about turning around the upward trajectory in crime that took place during a very tough January. But let's not kid ourselves. Subway safety is also an equity issue. Our riders, disproportionately working class, middle class, and yes, low income, our riders rely on the transit system to get to jobs, education, healthcare, and everything in between. The system needs to be safe and to feel safe for them. Otherwise, they won't be traveling and will have essentially cut off their access to opportunity. Now, we have to give credit where it's due. Mayor Adams saw what was happening in January when the crime numbers went up versus the year before, and he stepped up to deliver more NYPD resources. There are now an additional 1,000 officers daily patrolling the subways, and it's having an impact. Where crime was up 46% at the end of January compared to the prior January, the year-over-year statistical increase has been pushed down to 18% because February crime is way down from 2023. And we know that the surge of cops is being noticed and appreciated by our riders. We hear about it in every survey. It was reported on just last month by John Kaufman. Our riders tell us that the one thing that makes them feel safe is seeing uniformed cops, that the one thing that most would incline them to take the system more is a feeling of increased safety and seeing more police presence. We hear about it again and again, and we have to respond. Subway safety is also a matter of equity for our diverse workforce. They ought to be able to clock in every day with the expectation that their workplace is safe, and right now, folks who work at the MTA, folks who are in the system, especially the subway system, are feeling uncertain about that, and some of our bus drivers as well, I would emphasize. We've all heard about a few truly despicable attacks on transit workers recently. There are people out there with a history of violence, near book-length rap sheets, I might add, who are targeting our employees, getting arrested, and then walking free to do it again. I'm not exaggerating. This year, there have been 4 people arrested for attacks on MTA workers. Between them, they had 49 prior arrests, just the ones we can talk of. Just the ones we can talk of. And last year, the police made 43 arrests for assaulting our workers. How many indictments? 11. 11 indictments out of 43 arrests for assaulting MTA workers. We need, our partners in the criminal justice system to take action. Last week, there was an individual was arrested in the transit system who had 47 priors, 28 convictions, mostly for transit crime. This time he was arrested for felony narcotics and for grand larceny on an older woman. And it was his 6th arrest this year, 6th arrest. Bail was requested. Credit to the DAs who did that. The judge elected to let him walk. As I said, we need partners in the criminal justice system who will take action, including utilizing the transit ban tool that we pushed for so hard with our union partners and got enacted into law a couple years ago. We cannot let this endless cycle of violence against the workforce continue. There is way, way too much at stake. Safety for our workers, but also because the importance of our system to the city and to the region. We cannot allow the perception of safety or the lack of it to scare people away. I'm going to stop there. That's really what I wanted to talk about today, is safety and about equity. Those are the two issues that are really at the forefront right now. I want to thank the board. These are, challenging times and historic times for the MTA. We would not have been able to, mount the effort that we did on the operating budget, the effort that's going into preparing for the capital budget, to do all the work that's necessary to deal with this historic moment of congestion pricing without support from a really impressive group of people. I also want to especially acknowledge there are some transitions taking place. Mr. Miranda has noticed his intent to resign pending the confirmation by the Senate of a replacement. I just want to acknowledge your tremendous service. Some of our other colleagues, Mr. Chu and Mr. Fleischer, the holdover clock is running out on them, but folks have indicated that they are being nominated to serve on the board yet again, but I just want to acknowledge that milestone as well. We could not navigate these incredible moments without your support. I want to change to another good milestone for our board. If you recognize the microphone and you recognize the people, of course, Andrew, you don't know when this was from because this could have been any of the last, the last century, because Andrew Albert is in the photo. But Veronica Vanderpool, the former MTA board member, has been designated as the acting administrator of the FTA. This is, we all know Veronica. She's amazing. She is a transit pro. She's been the deputy administrator of FTA. She was a leading advocate, and she served impressively for years on the MTA board, and we are just thrilled to be able to have a partner who knows New York and somebody of that caliber in this important role. She's going to be responsible for making sure that all that Biden infrastructure plan money that is meant for transit gets out the door, and we're here to help her make sure it gets spent. And we're going to work with her a lot. I'm seeing her actually tomorrow when there is she'll be in town for an event. With that, I want to turn the mic over to Dr. Allison DeSereno, who has been the leader of the team that has done all of the detailed preparatory work for both to make the case through the federal environmental process, but also to plan for the implementation and oversee the implementation of congestion pricing. We are at the point where the infrastructure necessary to implement congestion pricing and to actually manage the congestion relief zone, as it's being denominated on all the signage, is ready to go. And that's because of Allison and her team. So Allison, bring us up to date, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As we get closer to a go-live date for Central Business District tolling, we've been getting a lot of questions related to what kind of information is going to be available once the program begins. So I'm going to take just a few moments to start with a summary of what we'll be monitoring and reporting on in the coming months and years. There are a number of monitoring and reporting requirements in the legislation, and we've added commitments through our federal environmental review process. As you can see here, we'll be looking at traffic congestion in and around the central business district, types of vehicles, volumes, VMT as we call it, taxi and FHV use. We'll be looking at transit ridership and average bus speeds, air quality, pollutants, greenhouse gas emissions, and we'll be looking as well at how are we doing with respect to the mitigation commitments from the environmental review process. How are we doing in terms of implementing? What kind of impact are they having? And then revenue and expenditures. Importantly, we've also committed to making this data analysis and any visualizations available in open data format to the greatest extent practicable. Updates will be provided on at least a biannual basis as data becomes available and analysis is completed. In essence, we're going to be very transparent about all of this. But for the remainder of the presentation, I'd like to focus on the system itself and the infrastructure. At a very high level, the system will work much like other toll systems in the region, including our own. For consistency, customers will be able to use E-ZPass or tolls by mail, where an image is taken of the license plate and a bill is sent to the registered vehicle owner. This system, however, is also going to be built to allow for additional technologies in the future. As with today's toll systems, the back office customer service center will provide the account management services for E-ZPass and tolls by mail customers, the plan management for those with discounts or exemption plans, and our customer service functions. By using the same back office as the other New York agencies, there'll be consistency in the customer experience, which is important, so people have the same look and feel that they're used to. Central Business District will be added to existing statements and toll bills, and the back office staff is trained already and continuing training to assist customers with specific questions related to the program, including those related to discounts and exemption plans and credits for those who are eligible. The testing of the back office system will be done with other regional tolling agencies from the entire E-ZPass group so that we know if you come from Florida, if you come from Delaware or Maryland and come into the city, you'll be able to get the toll on your either E-ZPass statement or your tolls by mail bill accordingly. And as you can see here is just a mock-up of an example. To make it very clear for people, those who are coming through, they'll see it just as they do today. They'll see all the different tolls they've taken. We will have the crossing credits for those who are eligible for them identified specifically on the toll bill so that they can see, or their invoice, their statement, excuse me, for E-ZPass, so that they can see this. So the locations. The roadway toll system and infrastructure is located at entrances, exits, and along the excluded roadways. The northern boundary generally has detection points between 60th and 61st Street, and importantly, the infrastructure is designed to fit the urban landscape. Where possible, we're using existing infrastructure. In fact, roughly 95% of the infrastructure is already installed. The final locations are being worked on as we speak, and just this morning we had an additional location completed. Con Edison and Verizon are enabling power and communications respectively, and more than 50% are already in some level of testing. For those who haven't already seen the system and infrastructure, that's actually a good thing. It's purposely designed to have a small footprint and fade into the urban landscape. Where possible, we've been using existing infrastructure, and in fact, roughly 35% of the locations are using infrastructure that's already existing. That's sign infrastructure, pedestrian walkways, overpasses, for example. The new infrastructure is poles and mast arms, similar to what's seen throughout the Central Business District today. And as you can see in the pictures here, on the left is an example of one of the locations where we have current infrastructure over in the Tribeca pedestrian bridge. In the middle is Broadway between 60th and 61st Street. This is a mast arm. And then on the very far right, you'll see the Central Drive or in Central Park area. And again, as you can see, it fades right into the landscape. Importantly, we're using infrared illumination, so there will be no light pollution from the system. This will help with respect to those working or living nearby, but it's also important for birds and other wildlife that are sensitive to light pollution. As I mentioned earlier, we just had another one completed this morning, so we have 104 of the 110 locations complete, and the remaining sites are being worked on as I speak here today. Con Ed and Verizon have been doing their electrical and communications hookups, and as I mentioned, we're well underway and nearing the end of the build. So infrastructure also includes signage. As Jano mentioned earlier, this is the kind of signage you'll be seeing. We'll be referring to it as the congestion relief zone. The entry and exit locations will be clearly marked, and there will be plenty of advance notice so that people who don't want to come into the zone can divert accordingly. The photos on the right show renderings of the signage along Fifth Avenue. With respect to the system and how it's going to identify, we're going to have a simplified number of vehicle classes, 5, in fact. The system's going to use advanced technology that focuses on vehicle characteristics, such as shape and other distinguishing features, to determine which class a vehicle fits into. This means much less maintenance and lower cost, as we don't need to install and maintain loops in the roadway like traditional toll systems. The advanced technology also uses machine learning software to continuously improve accuracy. In essence, the more vehicles the system sees, the better it gets at classifying them. Again, this reduces costs since you don't have to rely on manual review to the same extent as you otherwise would. Just to give a brief overview of how the system identifies the vehicle, you can see here a picture of what we call the cluster. This is what we've done. We have all of the camera, the reader, all the equipment is included in the single cluster. So again, it simplifies the look and the feel and the visual effect out on the roadways. In essence, the first step, it will identify the vehicle. It will look for the front license plate and capture that image. As the vehicle arrives in the antenna zone, the EasyPass tag is read. And as it leaves the rear camera field of view, the rear license plate image is captured. As you can see, with all this information, we have a good deal of data that we'll be tracking to make sure we have the vehicles classified, identified correctly. We've been hearing a lot of concern raised about toll violations, even though, and importantly, the vast majority of the drivers do in fact do the right thing and they pay their tolls. But for more on those who don't, I'm going to now turn this over to MTA Bridges and Tunnels President Kathy Sheridan.
Thank you, Allison, and good morning. So let's talk about historical toll collection and evasion at MTA Bridges and Tunnels crossings. As Allison mentioned, and as you see here, the majority of our customers pay their tolls using EasyPass, or we bill them through tolls by mail. In 2023, only 1.5% of all transactions were unbillable. And even though unbillable is a small percentage, every dollar is important. Unbillable comes in 2 categories: those under our control and those not under our control. As you see here, we've reduced by half system-related issues such as degraded images due to weather or duplicate reads. We've done this primarily through improved technology and repositioning of hardware. Here are subcategories of what we don't control: unregistered vehicles, covered and obstructed plates, and fraudulent plates. All of these have more than doubled in the past 4 years. These are drivers who are intentionally stealing from the rest of us. In 2023, the dollar amount of these 3 categories was almost $50 million. $50 million buys 30 electric buses, or 1 ADA station improvement, or 4 pump room rehabs. These are real capital needs that don't get funded because of these scofflaws. Let's look at intentional violators in action. This isn't a leaf blew onto my plate, or my plate was dirty. They bought these devices to mask their identity of their vehicles. And those who can afford to buy these expensive cars can afford to pay their fair share. But it's not just tolls. They also intentionally evade security cameras, red light cameras, speed cameras, and bus cameras. These are the same offenders who drive uninsured vehicles and are often committing serious crimes in our city. I'm happy to report these 2 were pulled over by MTA Bridges and Tunnels officers, and 1 was arrested. So what are we doing to reduce this upward trend? We're developing more robust enforcement approaches, and we will seek out violators in both occupied and unoccupied vehicles. Thankfully, enforcement for fraudulent, obstructed, and covered plates applies to vehicles from all states, not just New York. We are also working to prohibit the sales of plate covering devices. Additionally, our team is very creative, and we are leveraging technology to target our operations. Governor Hochul included our enforcement request in her proposed budget, which details stronger penalties for those who intentionally avoid detection, and we're thankful to her and her colleagues in the legislature who all agree this behavior is unacceptable. We are confident these proposals will become law and give us more teeth in our enforcement efforts. And you've heard this over and over again, this is about fairness for all drivers. The message is clear. If you intentionally conceal your plate or display fraudulent plates, we're going to find you, your vehicle will be seized, and you will pay the consequences. Now, while I touched on some of the capital needs and the impacts to those, Jamie will now provide some more details.
Thanks, Kathy and Allison. We wanted to. That's the good news about how effectively our colleagues at Bridges and Tunnels are getting ready to roll out the congestion pricing program. We wanted to give the board an update about the less good news, which is the risks to our capital program that result from the ongoing litigation against the manner of environmental review that was approved by the federal government. We provided this update to the Capital Committee on Monday and wanted to provide it to the full board as well, given its importance. As the board knows, we have built a powerful construction delivery organization at C&D and have been pursuing a 5-year capital program that is 70% larger than the last one, which has been producing real results. ADA stations, 67 in this plan, 26 have opened since 2020, including number 2 this year at Tremont that we were pleased to open yesterday. Third track, rebuilding the Canarsie Tube on time and under budget, the Long Island Railroad Concourse. Signal modernization on 5 lines underway with 2 more to go in this program. A lot more behind the curtain that is helping us to achieve subway on-time performance best in 10 years, railroad historic on-time performance in the high 90s on both of our railroads. This is why it is all the more concerning that we need to share with the board the impacts of the delays in congestion pricing due to the current litigation. Congestion pricing is foundational to the MTA's capital program, as you see here, especially to work that will improve and expand the system and make it more accessible. It'll raise $15 billion. That's 30% of this current capital program, but it's more than 50% of the remaining commitment authority that we have in this program. With several lawsuits pending, congestion pricing is at risk of delay, despite the benefits to, as the chair said earlier, the vast majority of commuters who use transit. To be clear, we're confident on the legal issues, the environmental review, and community outreach that we undertook. The analysis reflected in the 3,000-plus page study were extremely thorough. But with any lawsuit or lawsuits comes risk, especially of delay. And we can't award contracts until the funding is assured. So as a result, the MTA capital program must be placed mostly on hold. While litigation is pending, we will not be issuing any new construction contract solicitations, with very limited exceptions, as is stated here. And the board knows that we wrote to our contractor and consultant community that are part of how we get this really important work done in the middle of this month, and shared this with them. I do want to note that it's sort of even more compelling that the response we got from that community was wholehearted support for the importance of congestion pricing, the value of the program to the city, the value to the capital program, and also an intent to stick with us, our capital program, because of how effectively we've been serving as owners within that program. So I'm optimistic that the construction community is with us, but that's only going to last so long if we have these substantial delays that are mounting. So it's unfortunate, as we made great strides building momentum to make investment in our system. On average, the last 3 years, we have committed more than $9 billion of important work each year, and it would have been an average of $10 billion if not for delays already caused by congestion pricing last year. This year, we will be able to initiate barely a third of that, and it's really just federally funded work or the bare work that keeps our system up and running. And so I wanted to give you some some specifics on the devastating impact of this delay. This map shows a subset of what the $15 billion in congestion pricing will do for our transit system, and it makes it clear that the entire system in all 5 boroughs will be touched. We talk a lot about accessibility. We have a great accessibility advocacy community. It's one of the top priorities of this MTA. It's reflected in the historic settlement reached with disability advocates in 2022. This historic settlement is predicated on full funding for the program without delay. Without it, more than 20 ADA stations in this capital program are at risk. And you can see here where they're at risk. All 5 boroughs are impacted. 5 stations in the Bronx, from Mott Haven to Kingsbridge to Wakefield, Briarwood and Jamaica in Queens, Southern Brooklyn stations in Bensonhurst and Coney Island, Nostrand Avenue at the intersection of Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy, and major complexes like 42nd Street, Bryant Park. That's a hugely important accessibility investment, and Lexington Avenue, 59th Street in Manhattan. We've been making these investments. They are critical. They each, we can't get every station done in 1 year because of the complexity of all this work. And so we've gone through and targeted based on a very effective prioritization system where it makes sense to make the investments to serve the most customers in need of accessibility. And these next 20 or so, a little more than 20, are our biggest priorities, and they have to be placed on hold due to this delay. The board knows how important signal modernization is. In that work, we replaced the aging signal, track, and switch infrastructure, so it's state of good repair for the system to run on. We modernized signals to support automatic train operation for the reliability and capacity improvements. On the 7 line, where CBTC was installed first, on-time performance rose from 68% to more than 90%. Late last year, we were forced to put CBTC upgrades on the Fulton AC line in Brooklyn. That line, the A runs all the way to Far Rockaway. It's a really important line. It remains on hold, as does now the 6th Avenue line, which will improve service across the B, D, F, and M lines throughout 4 boroughs. Between these 2 projects, more than 1.5 million daily riders would stand to benefit from CBTC improvements, all the way to Far Rockaway, up to the Bronx, northern and eastern Queens, including in transit-dependent neighborhoods like Bed-Stuy, East New York, the Lower East Side. Just on these lines.
And Jamie, if you don't mind me
please,
saying,
please,
and
Rich,
these
yeah,
are our
yeah.
underperforming lines, the A, B, C, and D. We have conversations with the chair frequently about there's only so much Demetrius and his team can do. It is a huge focus of ours, but not having upgraded signal systems is a huge problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we actually, it's re-signaling is not easy. We work hand in hand between the 2 agencies, and we're starting to see some exciting results. And exactly as Rich says, there's a lot you can do, but really, when you can't rebuild the interlockings and the switches, and we can't automate train control and operation, we just can't get those benefits that we see on the 7 and the L. And so on these lines, we serve more riders than the next 5 largest subway systems in the country combined, just on these lines. Also at risk, another $1 billion in funding for new subway cars, like the new R211s now in service, and new cars that we're poised to purchase for Long Island Railroad and Metro North. New rolling stock is about customer comfort, and it's how we keep the system running as well. We've talked about this before. We've gone from mean distance between failure, which is how far a car can go before mechanical failure, of 5,000 miles in the 80s to above 200,000 miles today through the renewal of rolling stock, and we have a lot more to do. Now, those subway cars that were purchased in the 1980s are 40 years old. They're starting to decline, as everyone knows. As our 20-year needs assessment at the end of last year showed, we need to keep up the pace and replace them, or we will wind up with a new reliability crisis. That's what led us to the 5-year capital program system in the first place. Our sustainability program is also at risk. Congestion pricing will support the purchase of 270 electric buses on top of the 205 that we ordered at the end of last year, and just as critically, the installation of charging infrastructure at 10 depots to support them. Electrification is the core of our commitment to reduce the MTA's greenhouse gas emission footprint by 40%, 80% by 2040. It represents half of that commitment. That relies on congestion pricing. And those impacts are global, but they're also local. Electrifying the fleet that serves low-income neighborhoods with high asthma rates is a vital matter of environmental justice. Our electrification plan prioritizes environmental justice communities, so bus depots in historically underserved communities will be the first to replace diesel hybrid buses with electric. You'll see that again on the map. East New York, Harlem, Kingsbridge, those are the priority neighborhoods. We've talked a lot about the impact of this delay on 2nd Avenue subway. More than 50 years since the first groundbreaking, the promise of that, we have awarded that first early works contract, and that's proceeding, but we cannot proceed with the next contract, which is the major tunneling contract. That is on hold due to congestion pricing, and the entire program is at risk of delay, and each month of delay costs millions of dollars on our entire program, 2nd Avenue subway in particular. Beyond the projects that customers directly see, this will also impact reliability and state of good repair. It's more than 80% of the capital program is dedicated to core infrastructure. And while we've tried to avoid impacts to the most important state of good repair work, with a third of the capital program at risk, it simply isn't possible to avoid it completely. What's at risk? Structural repairs and overcoat painting on the D and F lines in Brooklyn, the 1 in the Bronx, the 7 in Queens, plus bridge rehabilitation on the 6 line in the Bronx, repairs to our power system to keep trains running, the ability to keep our shops and yards and bus depots running for our staff and to support good service. And this has impacts on the railroads as well. There are projects like remediating water conditions at Atlantic Terminal for Long Island Railroad, further electrification of the Hudson Line that are at risk. And this is not just about serving passengers. This capital program is critical to thousands of men and women who depend on these projects and the prevailing wage jobs that come with them for their livelihoods. Over 20,000 good jobs are supported by congestion pricing funding. And you can see that the impact is statewide. Nearly 1/4 of those jobs are in New York State outside of New York City. And our partners in delivery, private contracting and consulting firms who I referenced earlier, are also impacted. It's not just important what we're building, it's important how we build it. And the MTA is an important source of work for small businesses, minority and women-owned and disadvantaged business enterprises. We're #1 in New York State in terms of payments to those entities. Congestion pricing funding represents billions of dollars in work for those businesses. You've seen this graphic that we created for the 20-year needs assessment before, and we were looking into the future when we made it. But when you look closely at it, it really represents the choice that we have now. This is a real problem now. I mentioned earlier, 85% on-time performance on the subway and high 90s for both of our railroads. That's thanks to the work wholly attributable to our operating partners, but also thanks to the capital interventions that we've made since the summer of hell and everything that accompanied it. We can either invest in our capital program or we can return to the bad old days and see service decline. As of now, at least for the moment, we're headed down that declining path. We're making only the bare level of investment needed to award work with federal funding, emergency work, or keeping critical work going that is already underway. The level of investment that's needed to continue to maintain, improve, and expand our system and make it more accessible will have to wait until we can reliably commit the $15 billion made available to this program for congestion pricing. Thank you, Chair.
Well, a lot. I just want to compliment Jamie and his team for conveying, congestion pricing in some ways has been somewhat abstract, the impact for some time. And I think with this series of presentations and the information that you have shared, we're all starting to realize the impact that the delay can and is having already. And I just want to compliment again Dr. DeSereno and Kathy Sheridan. Is anybody surprised to learn that Kathy Sheridan was an officer in the United States Army? I am, the TBTA may not be the largest law enforcement force in the region, but it has been galvanizing all of the different law enforcement organizations to focus in on this issue of obscured plates. And in fact, we have teamed up with the NYPD under Mayor Adams' leadership because they are deathly concerned about this phenomenon of ghost plates. The fake plates, the temporary plates that are counterfeited widely, all of this stuff available on the internet, even though we've, in the state of New York, taken steps to ban it. And the city of New York has really been a good partner because they are concerned about the fact that these kinds of cars are usually, not usually, frequently used in crime. It's not just that they're avoiding tolls, that they're a bigger criminal justice issue for the city and safety issue. So thank you. So with that, I want to give the board an opportunity to raise questions or comments about any of the material that's been presented. Mr. Chu, and followed by Ms. Lopez.
So much was covered in a short amount of time. Thank you for acknowledging the end of my term. It's actually February 29th, so it gave me a milestone in my life on leap year. So I'll always have leap year to remember, getting the boot off the board. But I'm hopeful I'll have a successful confirmation and you'll be stuck with me. I just want to encourage people. I have people all the time, sending me videos of, turnstile hoppers and, fare evaders on the subway system. And similarly, I have people reach out to me when they see, people not refusing to pay fares on the commuter rails. Well, everybody in their communities, and I know we have a lot of cars in our suburban community, should be just as offended by these plate tampering. It's no less stealing than someone jumping a turnstile. It may in some ways be passive, but it should be just as offensive. And my question, and that is, if these cars park on the street and short of the Knight Rider style, swipey one, is there a way for someone to report, or to help, police if they see a tamper license?
I'm not sure the exact details, but they can be reported to NYPD.
Okay.
We can get those details out.
And similarly, in a jurisdiction, if you see it, a lot of these cars are coming from, externally, not from the city. But it would be a report to NYPD. Is it not is there any of a violation, criminal, civil, to have, a tampered license plate, even if it's not being actively or witnessed in use to evade a toll?
So fraudulent plates, if you're intentionally covering a plate, that can be a crime, depending on how the arrest happens and it's prosecuted. Typically, it's more civil. We are looking for more teeth in our legislative proposal.
Yeah, would you go over again? We've asked, the governor has asked the legislature to approve a significant increase in the penalties for this type of behavior. Allison, do you want to recap that?
So in summary, we're asking for, it's an increase of the fines, but it's really theft of services, which will allow, so fare evasion in the subway is a theft of service, and you can be arrested for that, and it's a crime. Toll evasion is not.
Which doesn't make any sense.
It does not make sense.
Yeah.
So we're asking for theft of services to be added to toll violations. Additionally, we're looking to be able to arrest for use of mechanical and electronic devices. So right now, we can write a summons, and we can't even take the device because it's their property. So we're asking to be able to seize that property and take it away from them. So there's a number of different details in that proposal, but it's basically to give us more teeth and make this a crime instead of just a summons.
I would say any way we could support you, and that kind of brings me to our next point about public safety that the chair had, emphasized so strongly. Our role, and we've, even in my short tenure on the board, we've had precedents for not just making tough decisions within the context of our board meetings, but, for external advocacy to, our legislators, to the governor. You mentioned specifically, the operating budget, the capital budget now, which are the congestion pricing. I think we should call it a different name, which is if we don't do this, we will have very significant climate impacts. Maybe that's a better acronym to get people activated. But on public safety, it's become very clear to me because it's a topic we speak about. There's no board cycle that goes by that we don't have, conversations on the record. When we're noshing in the back. That we are doing a lot, that the MTA is doing a lot, and just to bring home your point of, Chair, that we need external help at this point, and that's beyond policing. We need to have examination of the entire criminal justice vertical, how we're failing, public safety for our riders, and in our case, because we have, as their employer, we have a specific responsibility for our human capital. We could have our capital budget, we could have our operating budget, our human capital. Without our human capital, we have nothing. And that's, you've said it many times, our $1.5 trillion system is worthless if we don't have the people to operate it. So we have to protect them. So I think, for us as board members, I think it's, we really have to take it's up to us to take a more active role in making sure we're advocating for making sure that, fair, toll evasion, is really, there's teeth to it. And from this public safety perspective, making sure that we can, call for help.
And it's all of us in different ways represent different groups, and we have special relationships, and we should take advantage of that. We will work with the board to take advantage of that. And Ms. Lopez, I think then Mr. Bringaman, Mr. Mack, and Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Allison, Kathy, Jamie, thank you very much for your presentations. It's extremely sobering as to the impacts of what could happen if we don't move forward with congestion pricing. I just wanted to have more information. Allison, when you were talking about the reporting and the monitoring, can you just remind us who are we reporting to? I assume it's the state legislature, or how often do we have to provide reports?
So in the legislation, we have to provide initially our first report 1 year after go live, and then after that every 2 years. But as I mentioned, we'll be doing it much more frequently. There are a number of entities in the legislation that we must submit that report to, and so it's the governor, it's the state legislature, and more. But most importantly, we need to make it public as well. And then with respect to Federal Highway Administration, we are still waiting for the full process to play out. At some point, there may be additional reporting requirements for their purposes as well. But again, most importantly, this will be transparent, it will be made public, and it will be made public much more frequently than what's required in the legislation or from the Federal Highway Administration.
And just to reinforce, we're going to include it all in the open data portal. So we will.
Great.
It will all go through what we normally do, which is extensive, through the open.
Great, and I would strongly suggest, and you're probably going to do this, to certainly do additional outreach to the environmental justice communities so that they know how this will be improving their environment. I think that's really important for them to understand.
Yes, we actually have an environmental justice community group that has already had their first meeting, and we'll be having regular meetings with them throughout the process as well.
Okay, I think Mr. Bringaman was next.
Yes, Chair. With Will Schwartz moving on, who will be leading the charge for us in Albany to get us this needed legislation?
None? We have a strong GCR team. We have an existing arrangement with a lobbying outfit who has resources that we're taking advantage of. We don't like to pay for extra help, but coming as Will's departure did in the middle of the session, we're going to take advantage of it. And I do think that a lot of it is going to be done by our core staff. I mean, I think you see with the presentation that Kathy Sheridan gave, the effectiveness of just using our own staff to go and educate our partners in the legislature about the importance of this work, and that's the way we're primarily going to do it, is have regular visits to Albany by the people who are in charge of some of these initiatives. I think Mr. Mack was next.
I listened to all of this. I have over 50 years with 4 governors in this state, and in 4 police departments. By this congestion pricing, those enforcement agencies will be overwhelmed because it will only grow. People will take advantage. The only thing that will serve the purpose is more law enforcement, and we have to hopefully hire more men and women, especially in the MTA police. Right now, New York City is trying to do a nice job, so it looks good, but every policeman that's in the subway is taken off the street. Since the transit police has merged, there's a difference of 4,000 to 5,000 shortage from when we merged.
I think I had Mr. Zuckerman, and then we'll go to Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, we came into this, I think it was the November board meeting with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. The governor had worked diligently, extraordinarily to close our gap. We had a really strong budget for 2024 and beyond, 5 years of balanced budget. I can't remember the exact term you used, but it would resonate. In the last 3 months, we've had a number of things attack that budget in some ways. We've had both our operating budget and, frankly, our capital budget we've talked about. And while we knew these things, we're now seeing it show up. We're worried, we should be worried about undoing some of the great work. And when I say we, I don't mean we on this board, I don't mean we as this agency, I mean we as this city. We need the riders to do their part, because if they don't pay their fare, we can't operate the system. We need the drivers to do their part. We're going to have our fare hearings soon, or our conversations publicly about congestion pricing. It's the right thing to do. It's the only way we're going to close the gap on capital. I thought, Jamie, your chart correctly showed it. It's a huge part of our capital budget. It is how we are making the system work. And we need our friends in New Jersey to realize that the epicenter of many of their employees come here, and we need them to pay their fair share. Because this is the greatest city on earth, and it takes a lot to make the greatest city on earth work. It is not cheap to live here, and we're trying to make it equitable, we're trying to make it fair, we're trying to make it financially viable, and the only way to do that is everyone to pay their fair share. And I tell you, I don't want to come to you with the next budget and say, you know, we actually wasted the gift that the governor and the legislature gave us, which was balanced budgets. And so we have to keep advocating. I love the fact that each of us have a role to play privately. I love that. I'll just call out the chair and I. We actually didn't even see each other. We got off the subway this morning, coincidentally, and we both yelled at the same 2 kids who went through the slam gate. I was like, hey, fare evasion. And he was actually saying the same thing. He was 5 feet in front of me. And I'm like, wait. So, yeah, we can do it individually, but we also need every single one of us, and I include our, famous celebrities in New York who love this city. If you remember, many years ago, I think it was 20 years ago, we had a taxi campaign, buckle up for safety. Remember that, where celebs had that annoying, it was constantly running in every subway? Well, I wouldn't mind having some celebrities doing the same thing for fare evasion, because it's time we get a very prominent conversation going about how it is wrong. And I'm not talking about the $275 or $290 now, excuse me. I'm talking about the degradation of of propriety and the fact that it's even perceived as being something that is the one's right. It is not the right. The right is to pay. It is a theft of service, very well said, Kathy, and it's something we can't tolerate fiscally and frankly socially. So thank you for letting me go on a little tirade.
All right. The other fair evasion tirade will be coming from Mr. Albert.
Not in this session. Kathy, how many offenses of a tampered license plate have to occur before a vehicle is seized?
So a tampered license plate, so if you actually put tape on your license plate, that's a fraudulent instrument, and we can seize the vehicle and the plate and make an arrest. These flippers, the coverings, or you're going to another plate, we actually can't make an arrest there. The arrest that was made for the one that was flipping to the other plate, they actually fled, and that's how the arrest was made.
When you say arrests, does that include seizing the vehicle or just arresting?
Well, if we're arresting the driver, we're going to seize the vehicle as well.
Okay, and if the NYPD on their routine inspections all around the city see a tampered license plate or one of those mechanical things, are they allowed to arrest or contact that owner and take further measures?
So if the vehicle is parked, I believe it's a parking ticket. And no, they're not allowed to seize the device.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, could you just enumerate, you've done a lot of vehicle seizures, though, far more than in years past. Can you explain how those come to pass?
Sure. So, the majority of our seizures are for suspended registrations for toll violations. So we will, through our license plate reader technology, the officers get a notification in the vehicle, and they will then interdict the vehicle, determine all of the facts. If it is in fact a toll violator and the registration is suspended, they will seize the vehicle and send the driver on their way. And
Okay.
last year we seized over 1,800 vehicles for suspended registrations due to toll violations.
One last question. If these are out-of-state plates, do you contact those states' motor vehicle bureau when we arrest somebody for tampered plates or covering plates?
So the only reciprocity we have is with Massachusetts. We treat out of state, besides Massachusetts, as trespassing on our property, and it's a violation of our rules and regs. So it's slightly different. We issue a summons, which is like a warning. Then if the trespassing occurs again, then we can take action.
Okay, we have Mr. Glucksman with a hand raised online. Not counted for the quorum, but still present electronically.
Thank you for the very interesting presentations. I'm glad that you are making everyone aware how serious a problem it is. My question is, if the police or the traffic agents who go patrolling around the streets issuing summonses for meters and whatever, are they allowed to issue summonses if they see these obstructed and blocked plates?
They are. And actually our peace officers at MTA Bridges and Tunnels can also go off of our property and do that as well.
But I just want
Would
to
be
say,
a great
there is a multi-agency initiative underway to increase collaboration and enforcement on these, principally because of the ghost plates equal vehicles used in crime, right, Kathy? Yeah.
Yes, I think we have about 5 or 6 agencies that are working together to combat this.
Are you, Mr. Mack?
Thank
you want to say
you.
something else?
Yeah, I haven't said, and I kept my mouth shut. But every entrance, it would take 2 people or 3. All you have to do is put a man and put an officer on the entrance and apprehend them as they leave the tunnel, the bridges, and so forth. I must say that Nassau County, 4 years running, is the safest county in the United States. We just got the award. My own county executive has criticized me for spending too much money on men and women. We have too many police, yeah. But he went along, and we have the safest county 4 years running. And that goes for the Democrats and now the Republicans. So there's no substitute for manpower. And you can solve that problem on every entrance and exit.
Okay. Chief Mueller is just behind you, and I see him ready to serve if we are able to increase manpower. Ms. Mahaltzis?
So just, I don't know if this is a point of information, but I just spent 2 minutes searching some of our e-commerce sites, and you can buy one of those flippers. So maybe we should talk to our friends there.
I just wanted to, we actually initiated over a year ago a push with Amazon
Right.
on this issue, and they made a commitment. They made a commitment. Somehow, there are a lot of e-commerce sites that still have it. Kathy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you can find these on eBay. You can even find them on Etsy, which is kind of unusual. Amazon has made an effort not to ship to New York State, but if you dig hard enough and search hard enough on Amazon, you can still find devices that will cover and obstruct your plate. So we're working with leadership in Albany to see if we can have a more global effort on this.
Okay. Lots to think about. Anybody else want to be recognized? Okay. With that sobering presentation, I think we'll turn to the usual business of the board. The minutes of the January board meeting have been, and the minutes of each committee have been distributed to all members. Any corrections or omissions? Mr. Albert?
Yes, on page 6, where it lists public speakers, Lisa Daglian's title is president there. It should be executive director. And below there, under your remarks, Chair Lieber noted an incident that occurred on 143rd Street in the Bronx. It should say at the East 143rd Street, number 6 line station.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, with those corrections, may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Chu. Thank you for a second, Ms. Mahaltzis. All in favor? The minutes are approved.
I just want to note we do have a quorum for this.
Thank you. Okay. I chaired the Safety Committee and report the following. There's one action for board approval. The Federal Transit Administration requires an annual review and approval of New York City Transit's agency safety plans. The committee recommends these plans, and I move them. May I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Mahaltzis. Any comments? Vote all in favor. Any opposition or abstentions? The item carries. Bridges and Tunnels. Let me note that the Bridges and Tunnels Committee met Monday. There were no, right, and there were no actions of the committee. As Mr. Mack notes, we did not have a quorum. However, the board did consider the 2023 TBTA operation surplus resolution. That resolution has moved to finance, which board member Zuckerman will report on momentarily. Mr. Chu, would you deliver the capital program report?
Chair of the Capital Program Committee met Monday and reports the following. Construction and Development has 2 competitive actions for a proposed expenditure of $9.3 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Lopez. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items are approved.
That concludes the Capital Program Committee report.
Ms. Lopez, the Joint Railroad?
So we do have a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Or not for? Yes.
We have a quorum for business, but we don't have a quorum for the non-competitive items that you're about to present.
Thank you. So Chair of the Joint Railroad Committee met on Monday and reports the following. The committee discussed 2 procurement actions. However, the quorum required for these non-competitive public work contracts is not present today. The items will be postponed to our next meeting. Thank you.
Is that, how problematic is that, Mr. Springer?
I think that was, I thought we did the capital committee items a minute
We
ago.
did, but not railroad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just was unaware that it seems like we're going to be able to manage through. So that was what I wanted to know. Okay, onward. Joint Railroad Committee. finished, done?
Yeah, this concludes the Joint Committee
All
round.
right. Board Member Mahalt's Transit Committee, please.
Chair, the New York City Transit Committee met Monday, and there are no items for board approval.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you, sir. The Finance Committee met Monday afternoon, reports the following. There is one action which seeks board approval of the 2023 TBTA operating surplus resolutions. On Monday, both the Bridge and Tunnel and Finance Committees considered this item. The Finance Committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Is there a second? Mr. Mack, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item's carried.
There are no procurement actions this month, but we do have 4 real estate action items this month. They include 2 transactional action items for MTA, one for the City Transit Division, and one for Metro North. I recommend these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Chu, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item's carried.
Okay,
Real
that
estate
concludes
items
the Finance Committee report.
Okay. So with that, we have concluded the board business, and may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Mr. Chu. Second. Thank you, Ms. Lopez. All in favor? We are in adjournment. Thank you, everybody.
This is a street in Midtown Manhattan. A typical street on a typical afternoon. Buses, trucks, and cars moving at a snail's pace, bumper to bumper. New Yorkers are always in a hurry, but we waste an average of 117 hours a year sitting in traffic. Scale that up to the region, and pretty soon you're talking real money. Experts estimate that gridlock costs $20 billion a year in wasted time and lost productivity. There are other costs to having 700,000 vehicles enter the central business district every day. Air pollution, noise, car crashes, slow ambulances and fire trucks, when saving seconds in emergency response could mean saving lives. It doesn't have to be this way. Congestion pricing is our best bet to finally address gridlock in New York. Fewer cars mean cleaner air, less traffic, safer streets, and better transit throughout the region. It's time for a city that moves faster, breathes easier, works better. Find out more at congestionreliefzone.mta.info.
Hello, subway riders. With the goal to improve passenger safety, we are installing platform barriers at select stations as part of our platform safety pilot. The new barriers will be installed on the platform edge, next to the tactile warning strips. Gaps in the platform barriers will be strategically located to align with train car doors. allowing customers to easily enter and exit the train. These barriers provide a safe area between the platform's waiting area and the tracks, reducing the likelihood of accidents. These new barriers have been installed at 191st Street, Clark Street, and coming soon to West 8th Street, New York Aquarium. This is one of a number of pilots that we'll be conducting to make your ride safer. Thank you for riding with us.
We are often asked a question about why I can't stand in a certain location. I get the train here, this is my door, this is where I stand.
I know it's been a long day at work. You come here, you grab this train every single day in this spot, and today we asking you to move. It's because of your safety.
Safety is our main priority. Safety is our goal. We are here to make sure that you are safe.
The role of platform control is absolutely necessary because we control the flow of traffic. Without us, there's plenty of congestion and crowd conditions that form, and they're not managed well without our presence being there.
In addition to the piling up of the passengers when we have service disruptions, when we have our blue walls constructed for our construction sites, and people stand near them. What it does is it allows for a much more dangerous conditions for people. We are there to make sure that the passengers move down the platform.
We have ongoing capital projects that may include escalators, elevators, new installations. We have stations that go under whole complete renovations. So we are there on the scene to provide the safety for the customers.
Sometimes we have to go to special events, whether it's at the Barclays Center for crowd controls. Sometimes we are dispatched and we have a flood condition. Sometimes we may have a stuck train and we have to ensure that all the passengers are safe. So we can be dispatched anywhere throughout the system.
It's so much here that you do every single day. It's not the same thing day after day. There's always something new. What motivates me is seeing my customers. That's what brings me out here every single day, help people out.
This is a street in Midtown Manhattan. A typical street on a typical afternoon. Buses, trucks, and cars moving at a snail's pace, bumper to bumper. New Yorkers are always in a hurry, but we waste an average of 117 hours a year sitting in traffic. Scale that up to the region, and pretty soon you're talking real money. Experts estimate that gridlock costs $20 billion a year in wasted time and lost productivity. There are other costs to having 700,000 vehicles enter the central business district every day. Air pollution, noise, car crashes, slow ambulances and fire trucks, when saving seconds in emergency response could mean saving lives. It doesn't have to be this way. Congestion pricing is our best bet to finally address gridlock in New York. Fewer cars mean cleaner air, less traffic, safer streets, and better transit throughout the region. It's time for a city that moves faster, breathes easier, works better. Find out more at congestionreliefzone.mta.info.
Hello, subway riders. With the goal to improve passenger safety, we are installing platform barriers at select stations as part of our platform safety pilot. The new barriers will be installed on the platform edge, next to the tactile warning strips. Gaps in the platform barriers will be strategically located to align with train car doors, allowing customers to easily enter and exit the train. These barriers provide a safe area between the platform's waiting area and the tracks, reducing the likelihood of accidents. These new barriers have been installed at 191st Street, Clark Street, and coming soon to West 8th Street, New York Aquarium. This is one of a number of pilots that we'll be conducting to make your ride safer. Thank you for riding with us.
We are often asked a question about why I can't stand in a certain location. I get the train here, this is my door, this is where I stand.
I know it's been a long day at work, You come here, you grab this train every single day in this spot, and today we asking you to move. It's because of your safety.
Safety is our main priority. Safety is our goal. We are here to make sure that you are safe.
The role of platform control is absolutely necessary because we control the flow of traffic. Without us, there's plenty of congestion and crowd conditions that form, and they're not managed well without our presence being there.
In addition to the piling up of the passengers when we have service disruptions, when we have our blue walls constructed for our construction sites and people stand near them, what it does is it allows for a much more dangerous conditions for people. We are there to make sure that the passengers move down the platform.
We have ongoing capital projects that may include escalators, elevators, new installations. We have stations that go under whole complete renovations. So we are there on the scene to provide the safety for the customers.
Sometimes we have to go to special events, whether it's at the Barclays Center for crowd controls. Sometimes we are dispatched if we have a flood condition. Sometimes we may have a stuck train and we have to ensure that all the passengers are safe. So we can be dispatched anywhere throughout the system.
It's so much here that you do every single day. It's not the same thing day after day. There's always something new. What motivates me is seeing my customers. That's what brings me out here every single day, help people out.
This is a street in Midtown Manhattan. A typical street on a typical afternoon. Buses, trucks, and cars moving at a snail's pace, bumper to bumper. New Yorkers are always in a hurry, but we waste an average of 117 hours a year sitting in traffic. Scale that up to the region, and pretty soon you're talking real money. Experts estimate that gridlock costs $20 billion a year in wasted time and lost productivity. There are other costs to having 700,000 vehicles enter the central business district every day. Air pollution, noise, car crashes, slow ambulances and fire trucks, when saving seconds in emergency response could mean saving lives. It doesn't have to be this way. Congestion pricing is our best bet to finally address gridlock in New York. Fewer cars mean cleaner air, less traffic, safer streets, and better transit throughout the region. It's time for a city that moves faster, breathes easier, works better. Find out more at congestionreliefzone.mta.info.
Hello, subway riders. With the goal to improve passenger safety, we are installing platform barriers at select stations as part of our platform safety pilot. The new barriers will be installed on the platform edge, next to the tactile warning strips. Gaps in the platform barriers will be strategically located to align with train car doors, allowing customers to easily enter and exit the train. These barriers provide a safe area between the platform's waiting area and the tracks, reducing the likelihood of accidents. These new barriers have been installed at 191st Street, Clark Street, and coming soon to West 8th Street, New York Aquarium. This is one of a number of pilots that we'll be conducting to make your ride safer. Thank you for riding with us.
We are often asked a question about why I can't stand in a certain location. I get the train here, this is my door, this is where I stand.
I know it's been a long day at work. You come here, you grab this train every single day in this spot, and today we asking you to move. It's because of your safety.
Safety is our main priority. Safety is our goal. We are here to make sure that you are safe.
The role of platform control is absolutely necessary because we control the flow of traffic. Without us, there's plenty of congestion and crowd conditions that form, and they're not managed well without our presence being there.
In addition to the piling up of the passengers when we have service disruptions, when we have our blue walls constructed for our construction sites, and people stand near them. What it does is it allows for a much more dangerous conditions for people. We are there to make sure that the passengers move down the platform.
We have ongoing capital projects that may include escalators, elevators, new installations. We have stations that go under whole complete renovations. So we are there on the scene to provide the safety for the customers.
Sometimes we have to go to special events, whether it's at the the Barclays Center for Crowd Controls. Sometimes we are dispatched and we have a flood condition. Sometimes we may have a stuck train and we have to ensure that all the passengers are safe. So we can be dispatched anywhere throughout the system.
It's so much here that you do every single day. It's not the same thing day after day. There's always something new. What motivates me is seeing my customers. That's what brings me out here every single day.
are set to rock and labor.
It never stops. Couple things that I thought were high points of the meeting that are worth emphasizing. One is that we're almost there on having all the congestion pricing infrastructure in place. 95% in place. So I think there are five locations where there's still work to be done out of 110 roughly, and the infrastructure is going to be ready to go. I was also glad that the board got to hear about how we're pushing back against people who intentionally obscure their plates and try to do toll evasion that way, which was, fortunately, it's only 1% of our of folks who go through the tolling system on MTA bridges and tunnels, but I thought that was super important. Obviously, we're all thinking about safety this week. Tremendous presentation on Monday by Chief Kemper. And we're going to keep pushing hard to make sure not only that our riders but also our workforce is protected. And we're calling on the criminal justice system, and there are a lot of different stakeholders. So, not interjecting myself into any particular debate, but there are a lot of the criminal justice system needs to make sure that folks who do repetitive crimes in the subway system, in our mass transit system, don't just end up right back there to do it again and again and again. That is the concern that we're increasingly hearing from our workforce and from our riders. So with that, let's go ahead and get it started.
All right, good segue. We'll start with Mr. Safety himself, Andrew Siff from WNBC. Andrew.
Jano, how are you? You've been certain and confident about the start of congestion pricing for months and months, but a lot of New Yorkers we talk to say things like, is that really going to happen? I hear about all these lawsuits. I'm wondering what message you think it sends to say we've got 95% of the equipment up, people see it in their neighborhood, they're like, oh, maybe this thing's really going to switch on. What would your message be to New Yorkers about your degree of certainty that it happens in about 3 months?
Listen, in fairness to New Yorkers, this was enacted by the legislature in 2019. So it's taken a while. We had 4 years where we had to go through this whole federal process, which was delayed by the Trump administration, but we're really there. We are ready, both in terms of our ability to execute on congestion pricing, but we're also ready because we have a great transit system, which is serving more and more people and is giving better and better service and has the funding in order to absorb everybody who might want to come to transit as an alternative to driving into the city. So we're there physically, we're there technologically, and we're there in terms of transit service, and it's exciting.
You're not worried at all about the lawsuits causing a delay which could call the whole thing into question?
Listen, the lawsuits are lawsuits, which is why they create risk, and we have to take the action we've taken to put a temporary pause on the capital program. But the direction of the legal process is very good. We've got a clear schedule from both the judge in New Jersey and also the judge in New York, who's taken on all the New York lawsuits, that they're going to make rulings before the congestion pricing system is designed to go live in June. So we're on a path with a schedule that makes it highly probable that we're going to be able to implement come June.
And next up is Ben Bruckfeld. He's here from AM New York. Ben, good morning.
Yeah. Hey, Jana. So I wanted to ask first off, are you when you say that you're going to get a ruling on congestion pricing before June, is there any talk? So are you saying that this is going to go to trial and you're not in settlement talks?
Okay,
with
Ben, just a little on the legal process. There's no trial. There are cross motions for summary judgment. Both sides say, hey, this is a lawsuit about whether the federal bureaucratic process was complied with by the MTA. And there's a record of all the paperwork that everyone's agreed on. And both sides have said, we're entitled to a ruling in our favor based on the record that is at issue in the lawsuit. So there's no trial, there's no testimony. The papers are fully submitted in New Jersey, and I think will be in New York, and the judges will be able to make ruling just on the papers. Now there is going to be oral argument, but there's no trial process that's anticipated.
Okay. And I also wanted to ask about the complaints by some of these private bus operators, like the Hampton Jitney, the Megabus. So I spoke to the head of the Hampton Jitney yesterday, and he said that the TMRB's designation of companies like Hampton Jitney as not being public transit, he said that was bogus. So I wanted to ask you if you why do you think a company, he was basically saying, oh, we bring commuters in and out of New York City, between there and Eastern Long Island. So why wouldn't a company like the Hampton Jitney be a public transit option?
Listen, I'm moved by your sympathy for folks who are going to the Hamptons. It's notable, but the bigger issue is what the TMRB proposed was that exemptions should go to bus systems that are open to the public, that run regular routes, and that are, either operated by government or under contract to government. The government has made them part of the mass transit system rather than a private bus company that's out there making money for a particular subclass of riders. We're still listening. We are using the hearings tomorrow. I want to emphasize that to hear from folks about elements of the toll structure, and this is one. But that was the TMRB's proposal. Obviously, the MTA board adopted that hook, line, and sinker. But we are still using this SAPA process, the hearing process that begins tomorrow, to listen to folks who might have comments on elements of the toll structure, and that's probably going to be one that we'll hear about.
All right, if you direct your attention to the mezzanine, you'll see Sonia Rincon from Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Sonia.
Hi,
Thank
Sonia.
you. Hi, Jano. So with regard to toll evasion, more tolling could lead to more evasion attempts. People who are paying the tolls don't like to see people who are not paying the tolls.
Yeah.
And would it be helpful to have a way to report those obscured plates? If you go on 311 right now, you can report to New York City if you see a paper plate, but that's the only sort of category like that, and that's obviously reporting it to the city, not to the MTA. Would it be helpful to have the public reporting those plate covers?
It's a great point. The MTA has been a leader on this issue of toll evasion, especially obscured plates, people trying to monkey with plates to avoid paying tolls. But we have a really close relationship with NYPD and other toll enforcement agencies, especially because your point is right. Ghost plates, the fake plates, the counterfeit plates, the obscured plates, the NYPD looks as a source of crime, not just toll evasion. It's actually, they're used in crime. So we're working very closely with them, and I will look into the question that you're raising, is there a clear way for the public to report that? Yes, go to the NYPD, go to the MTA. We're all working together, but I'm sure we can make it better. It's a good point.
All right, now we go to the representative of America's newspaper, Nolan Hicks, right there in the front row. Nolan.
Whose America is that?
I'm just not going to dignify that with a response. The question about the Hamptons Jitney.
A lot of passion for the Hamptons.
No, but
in the front row here. All right. Alfonso, are there other parts of Long Island other than the Hamptons? Are you aware of any? Go ahead, Nolan. Okay, yeah.
And it's also out of my price bracket.
I know you're a Fire Island guy. I'm aware.
All right, fair enough. Wow, just shots all around. It's like riding one of your trains. But to take people take these private buses.
Yeah.
In part because the trains coming out of Penn Station to get to the South Shore are packed and actually over capacity. If you pull your own 20-year needs assessment, it recommends against making further improvements to portions of the Montauk line out on the Far East End because it says that there simply isn't enough space on the trains and there aren't enough locomotives to provide any more additional service. So when the private marketplace is filling a need that the MTA is incapable of meeting, why should there be a toll applied to that?
So listen, I can't respond to your claims about whether every train that serves the east end of Long Island is packed. I just don't have that data in front of me. I'm not sure it's true. But the point that you're raising is not wrong, which is that it is serving the public. It is serving. It provides a mass transit option for some people, and the question is, because it is only serving a subgroup of people who happen to be going to a wealthier area, and because it's not chartered by government, should it be treated differently? That the TMRB recommended that. I'm sure we're going to hear about that tomorrow and in the hearings, and we'll be thinking about that issue.
And if I could just, I guess, sort of follow up on that point, there have been many promises made to Long Island to expand electrification, whether it's taking the Ronkonkoma line electrification out to Riverhead, or the Port Jefferson out to the end of the line, or the Babylon line out to Patchogue. There have been promises made repeatedly throughout the decades.
I don't know. This MTA has not made promises on those issues. The premise of that question is not accurate. What we have said is that we're looking at options for improving and increasing service, to eastern Long Island, and that all of those lines that you mentioned are part of what's being looked at as part of the 20-year needs assessment. But there's certainly, this MTA has made no commitments on that.
And the parking lots that are filled with cars, people trying to get out and then have to drive out or opt to drive out because there isn't sufficient service. I mean, that seems like it's rendering a verdict on the service you're providing.
We have plenty of room in the parking lots at Ronkonkoma. We could go through the premises that you're raising. I'm just struggling with. So go ahead and ask me a question that I can answer without a premise that I have to take issue with.
A question without a premise would be...
take a shot.
So to speak.
Anyways, so if you go out, all right, to take the example again, on a diesel train, there's, I don't know, 5 or 6, it's every other hour, I think, basically out to like a Patchogue, right? There's parking lots next to all the ferry lots where people drive and then park and then take the boats to get out to the beaches.
Yeah, I know you're familiar with it.
It's a summer crowd, but it is a piece of traffic, and it is does make getting around on Long Island very difficult, particularly in the summertime. What is the MTA's responsibility to help ameliorate that?
I think we're certainly going to take a look at the South Shore service and the level of the capacity and how many trains are running. Broadly speaking, we have dramatically increased service to Long Island that was enabled by the Grand Central Madison in combination with third track and double track. And that is a huge benefit. And it also means that people are more and more able to go. They don't only have to go in the dominant direction in and out of the city. They can go off hours. They can go reverse commute. So we think we have dramatically improved it. But I'm happy to look at the level of capacity on the South Shore, because I know it's personally of concern to you as a Fire Island community.
All right, we gotta move on, Nolan. Let's direct your attention, sir. I'm sorry, to the East Gallery. You got Elijah Westbrook has been patient here from CBS 2. Elijah.
Good afternoon, Jano. So my question, it pertains to the delays, if you will, the potential delays in the subway station projects because of the congestion pricing lawsuits. At this particular point in time, what else can the MTA do to try and get these projects up and running? Is there a plan B at this point?
No, there isn't, and that's why we talked about this twice this week at our committee meeting on Monday and today. You heard that we have 20 stations that are supposed to have ADA accessibility, and that means seniors, parents with strollers, just regular New Yorkers who have trouble with stairs are not going to be able to use the system as quickly as they ought to be. And that means that we're not buying zero emissions buses as fast as we want to. It means that we can't buy subway cars as fast as we should be. It means that the A train, which is one of the most complex lines in all of the subway system, doesn't get the modern signals that the 7 train, which went from 68% to 92% of on-time performance in a single in a couple of weeks when we turned on those new signals, that we can't do that on the A train. It's an equity issue, it's not fair, and it's a real concern. So there's no plan B for $15 billion to show up magically if congestion pricing doesn't happen.
Thank you.
All right, Alfonso Castillo is here from Newsday. Now, did you yield your time to the special correspondent Nolan Hicks on Long Island, or do you have a question?
As long as you don't talk about, as long as you don't talk about Fire Island specific service, I'll take any question from.
Okay, I'll try to keep it west of there. So a couple of Long Island related questions. One about fare evasion on the Long Island Railroad. You've talked about how you're no fan of the ADL invoices. Yeah. And I know on Monday there was some discussion about the increased police enforcement that has curbed that to an extent. Yeah. I was able to see this list of kind of repeat offenders that conductors keep of people who've gotten more than one of these. In some cases, people have gotten several dozens, several $100s, and it seems to be pretty persistent. How confident are you that that has been remedied by this increased police enforcement? And what, if anything, do you think should happen to those people who, again, have done this dozens and dozens and dozens of times?
Well, it's not remedied, but fare evasion, listen, is a problem across our system. It is a problem on the commuter railroads. What we're doing is what you talked about. The first thing we're doing is that we have MTA PD who are policing when they come across a fare evader, or when the conductor comes across a fare evader, they can have a cop intervene because there are cops on the train. Credit John Mueller and the MTA PD for increasing train patrols. And what they're doing for the first time, I think in a long time, is they're just taking them off the train. So that is probably a significant discouragement for people, irrespective of what process follows. Is they're going to be taken off the train. Just like in the transit system, in the subway system, when you catch somebody for fare evasion, they're not allowed to just get on the train. They're taken out of the system. So that's the number one thing. I think that's a huge step forward. But we also need to be able, for our MTA PD, to be able to give people a ticket just like we do in the subway system. Right now they have this choice, which makes no sense, between giving somebody effectively a polite IOU, which they don't pay, or actually arresting them criminally. We want it to be the same as it is in the MTA subway system and the bus system, which is if you fare evade, you get a summons, a civil summons. And we've actually proposed that we start to get the criminal justice system to bear down on people who are recidivists in getting those types of fare evasion summons. If you get, 2, you shouldn't go to jail. But if you get 22, I think the system ought to deal with you differently, and we're taking action on that. So we've made the initial step of taking them off the train. Now we're trying to get the legislature to give us the power to give them a summons to fine them appropriately.
A second thing, if you don't mind, regarding third track, something we haven't talked about much in a little while. So there was this community benefits fund. I wrote about it last year when I had some of the information about where some of that money went. This was money included in the budget for local projects. And the thought was it was a way of kind of winning over some opponents of the project. We've since gotten more information on what was in there. Particularly for Mineola and some other villages. There's stuff like, I think it was more than $1 million for AstroTurf on a baseball field, stuff that's not directly transit related. What would you say to people who question the legitimacy of those kind of expenditures in the third track project?
So here's what people who are looking at the third track project should know, which is that we took a 10-mile long project that it was really complicated through one of the most developed areas of Long Island with villages and towns and school districts and fire districts and dog catching districts aplenty, all of which had jurisdiction and issues that could have held the project up. We figured out how to work with them through a very successful ongoing community outreach process, and we finished the project on time and $100 million under budget. That is the definition of success on a mega project. Part of that was that we worked with the communities all along in a process that managed how they use those community benefits funds, which, by the way, were allocated based on the level of actual construction work that was going on in those communities. And when we went and used community report cards as a way of figuring out how much the contractors should get bonuses for, whether they were good community partners or not, we were, they got reasonably high marks. They got, I think, solid Bs mostly across the board. So it was a really successful process of working with the communities, managing these community benefits funds, and most important, delivering the project on time and under budget. We're very proud of that.
Thank you.
All right, next up, he is reeling from the brutal Saturday beatdown by the Celtics, but proudly still sporting the Knicks cap. Dave Colon from Streets Blog. Dave, thanks for joining us.
I'm doing fine, actually. They're still in fourth place, and the Rangers are also very good.
Thank you for noting that.
That the Rangers are good?
Yeah, no,
I know you're a hockey guy, Jano. I had a couple for you. I'm also a beach guy. So in terms of this theft of services for toll evasion, it has been a kind of yearly Albany dance. The last guy, I don't know if you remember Andrew Cuomo, he wanted to make toll evasion theft of services. Legislature would always say no. Kathy Hochul showed up. She's wanted to do it for a couple of years now. Legislature has said no. And in fact, they want to do the Toll Payer Protection Act. And you have some people there who are very into that, kind of the opposite of adding theft services to that. Do you think that just because you're going to be able to say, well, these numbers have doubled and congestion pricing is coming, and these are a lot of legislators who don't care about congestion pricing, are they going to suddenly go, you're right, we're on board with you guys now, and we want to expand the criminal justice system to
So I actually think they're sort of two separate issues. You're not wrong to raise them. One is the question of whether there's legislative support for getting tougher with people who intentionally obscure plates and intentionally evade tolls. I think that we have strong support for that. People understand that they're stealing from everybody else when they engage in these kinds of toll evasion schemes, covered plates, mangling the plate, and so on and so on. Historically, there have been concerns. You referenced the Toll Payer Protection Act about the way that MTA tolls, when you don't pay them, the penalties pile up and so on. And we've signaled to the legislature we're happy to talk about that issue because the goal is not to have penalties too quickly accelerate. We just want to make sure that people notice that you got to pay your tolls and you got to step up like everybody else and pay your bills when the public depends on it. So we're happy to talk about that. Some of the issues that drove the politics in Albany of the Toll Payer Protection Act, but I'm really optimistic that dealing with these intentional scofflaws is an issue that has real legislative support.
And then the other thing is, if we're going to say, congestion pricing is going to start in June, and let's all say, okay, that's the state of things. The mayor has been someone who has said that he doesn't consider it his legacy on how many bus lanes and bike lanes he installs in the city, and there has been kind of a rocky rollout from his administration in terms of getting bus priority out there. Are you confident that the city is going to have the streets ready, is going to take care of placard abuse, is going to make sure that buses can move and have priority on the streets when congestion pricing starts, or is this going to be something where we're going to waste this, peace dividend, so to speak?
We're working with the city every day on all the full range of issues of how do we have a surface transportation system, which is, the one that New Yorkers deserve in terms of speed and reliability and safety. Congestion pricing is going to make for safer streets. It's going to give us an opportunity to move buses more quickly, and we're going to work with the city to make sure we take full advantage of that opportunity. I just want to emphasize, I have a great relationship with City Hall, with Mayor Adams in particular. We work together so much on safety issues. It's been a great plus. We're going to keep working on all of the issues that where the MTA and the city overlap.
And over to Samantha Liebman right there from New York One. Sam, good afternoon.
Is this on? All right. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. It's already afternoon. I just wanted you to kind of neatly explain why you cannot arrest toll evaders right now and how important it is to get better enforcement with congestion pricing coming in. And I think you said you lost $50 million last year to toll evasion. So can you just talk about how important that is?
So, just to be clear, toll evasion only represents 1% of the folks who toll payers. So the vast majority, 99% of people are paying their tolls. They're getting billed. They're being responsible. For that 1%, you're right, Samantha, as Kathy Sheridan said, it adds up to 50 million. We need these people to be, part of New York and pay their fair share. Everybody gets burned when they see somebody, when they're paying for the subway and they see somebody walk through the exit gate or jump over the turnstile. This is no different, but it's on a much bigger scale. And it requires, in some ways, a lot more planning and kind of nefarious behavior that's really offensive to people. They're going out, they're buying these things. New York, we made a deal with Amazon that they couldn't sell these devices that obscure a plate, and yet they're finding them elsewhere on the internet. They're taking active steps to evade tolls. That's really a problem in terms of the fairness of New York. It's not just about money, it's about a sense of fairness that we're all in this together. And New Yorkers really resent that. This issue has become higher profile, not just because of congestion pricing and tolls, but because the city has recognized that these cars with fake plates and counterfeit plates and obscured plates are routinely used in crime. This is the way that criminals do go about their business without, encouraging the cops to catch them or allowing the cops to catch them. So we're in lockstep with the city that we need to crack down on fake plates, counterfeit plates, and obscured plates.
All right, here in the, I'm sorry, follow-up?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
One more question. When did the NYPD start going along with Eagle teams on the SBS buses, and why? And I just wanted you to respond to this Hellgate article about, people reaching the Omni cap and then the Eagle teams not being able to verify that they paid and yanking them off the bus.
For the record, it's Rich Davey now, not Jano. Yeah. He walked away. A couple things. So first, the Eagle team started partnering with NYPD at our request earlier, or at the end of last year, November-ish. That was both for SBS and local bus. I think, as you know, that we also kicked off a process to have Eagle teams on the local buses as well with NYPD support. I saw the article. I'm not aware. It's the first that came to my attention that there might be an issue. We're not aware of any reader issues. As I understand it, the technology doesn't distinguish between a 12-tap or a 30-day. All it knows is whether whatever device or thing you're using was it tapped recently or not. I would also, as well suggest SBS folks, a lot of folks, how they pay actually get a receipt in their hand and are supposed to show that to the Eagle team. In that instance, I don't know if those customers did or didn't. But we're going to look at it. But I also just want to correct the record, too. There seemed to be some confusion. With the local bus, there is no handheld validator, right? On the local bus, the Eagle team, supported by NYPD, is literally observing whether or not someone pays. And if they blow by the driver and not pay, that is when they're stopped. So I am 1,000% confident that that is not an issue because there is no device. It is literally humans watching humans.
Microphone, Sam. Can't hear you.
Can they just tap with the Omni? Can they just board and tap?
Sure. Yeah, they can. Absolutely.
So I think that was the question, that they already hit the 3450.
I read the article. There were a lot of questions, so I was trying to correct the whole record. On that one, we're looking at it, but as I said, it's not a known issue that whether they hit 30, it's actually 12 in a 7-day period, I think specifically. That's not a known issue with our technology. So, but I asked the team to take another look at it. They found 2 individuals of millions of bus customers, so I can't speak to those 2 instances, but we're going to look at it.
All right, moving along. Over here in the upper deck, if you look up, Jano, you'll see Lisa Rosner from CBS 2. Lisa?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you talk about where do things stand with tolling exemptions or reductions for city workers like teachers and NYPD, and do any of these lawsuits impact the timetable on those decisions?
So the board, the state law created a board that was specifically looking at the toll structure, and they recommended that we not have special exemptions for people based on what work they do, just like the tolling system in general. Just like we have tolls on the the LIE or on our bridges and tunnels or on the Garden State Parkway, we're not saying, what do you do for a living? Do you have to pay the toll? They say everybody should pay the toll. And the other point that they made is that if somebody has to drive and can't take transit because they're doing a specific job, that should be on their employer to figure out with them how do they get compensated for that. So that was very clear. We're not creating a hierarchy where some people have jobs where they get exemptions and some people don't. That said, it's perfectly legitimate to say that if someone's forced to drive in by their employer, the employer ought to pay them back for that additional cost. Now, on the question of whether, when the tolls are going to be put into effect, as I said earlier, we're going through a hearing process starting tomorrow night. And we're anticipating that whether there are adjustments made to the toll structure or not, that the tolling and congestion pricing system is going to go into effect in June, assuming the lawsuits are resolved timely.
Okay, but do some of the lawsuits that were filed are about like these city workers? Does that bring the MTA back to the drawing board on any
Right.
of that?
No, but no. It's all the lawsuits are really about the environmental process that went on, because that's the challenge to the whole tolling system. So that's going to be resolved. As I said, there's a schedule in both the New Jersey cases and the one court which is handling all the New York cases, and the schedule is designed to resolve those issues before tolling goes into effect in June.
And from the New York Daily News, we have Evan Simko-Bednarski with us today. Evan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, Jenna. Two questions. First, the violence last week brought focus on, and arrests were aided by the security cameras on board those trains. I had a couple questions about that project in general. You had mentioned a year-long timeline. Is all of the rolling stock capable for a retrofit? Are lines being prioritized either based on rolling stock or based on, reports of crime on particular lines? And how is that? Is that footage only retrieved when there are reports of an incident, or does it, like the closed camera system, sort of feed into a central location?
Well, okay. I'm going to take a crack at a couple of those questions and then ask Rich to clarify, correct, and expand on. Number one, the new trains, the operator and the conductor have the ability to see into cars through cameras, and that's really fabulous, because if there's a report of something, whatever kind, going on, that enables the people operating the train. The retrofit cameras, which are being retrofitted in the entire fleet, going back to trains that are over 40 years old, are cameras that record what goes on. But they are, you're correct, they're not streaming at the moment, but they have tremendous value. The caliber of the video is extraordinary, and it is allowing, you saw it last week, within days they had identified, the cops had identified the folks who did that terrible shooting on the D train in the Bronx, and they were able to apprehend them. So incredible value, incredible deterrent value. We see that the bad guys are starting to figure out that there are 15,000 cameras in the system, and now they're going to be discouraged for doing anything on the trains as well. So we think this is really a transformative project, and Rich and Demetrius get credit for figuring out how to retrofit all these much older cars in particular, and to do it so quickly. Rich?
I deserve no credit because I don't know how they're doing it. But and we're not prioritizing based on crime or by line. We're prioritizing based on when cars come in for their regular maintenance, right? So obviously we got to make sure we're running service fundamentally. So, but that's how the car equipment team is prioritizing that. And as said, our initial commitment was to finish it by sometime early next year. Jano and Governor Hochul's challenged us to do it by the end of the year, and that's what we're focused on, is getting every car in the system retrofitted by December 31st.
I just want to say this is particularly important because so many of the type of crime that drives the numbers consistently, it's about half the crimes in the system are property crimes, the nonviolent grand larcenies. which are predominantly pickpockets and people who are just grabbing bags and rushing off the trains and those types of property crimes, those take place on the train. So the more we have video of those people, the more we can, and a lot of them are organized groups, the more we can hopefully get the cops to identify them, arrest them, and then we hope that the criminal justice system will not send them right back to the system, because some of that has been taking place.
I've got one more quick question. I noticed on that map over there, the East New York Bus Depot is circled for a renovation. I am wondering if the I'm wondering.
I know I won't be able to answer the question, so go ahead.
I'm wondering if the plan to overhaul the fire sprinkler system over there is part of that, or if that money is already allocated.
Okay. Fire sprinklers. Mr. Davey. Mr. Stern.
So, obviously we've been working very hard on this. I think you've reported on it a few times. But the first goal is we still have the fire watch in place. Not efficient, but it is part of the fire life safety that's there. We've been working very hard to shore up that system as an initial matter, stabilize it. I think we're very, very close. We've had some challenges. It's an old system. And then working with Jamie and C&D, coming up with the full plan to entirely retrofit the depot at some point in the future. But right now, let's stabilize the system like ASAP. It's taken more time, I think, we would all like, but we're pretty close. And then when we retrofit the depot particularly for e-charging, I mean, that's really what the investment's all about. We'll look at these kinds of fire life safety issues as well to implement, but that's the goal.
Thank you. A whole-scale replacement of that system is on hold until congestion pricing money can come online.
It is, but it's not necessary, right, to stay, right? So the system itself, we've been working hard to get it in working order. We will be able to do that, right? We've been chasing leaks on the system and continue to plug them. As I said, we're pretty close. But yeah, the goal is to not only retrofit the depot for electric charging, but also to make those kinds of improvements, as you said. And yes, those permanent improvements are on hold until congestion pricing is resolved.
Thank you.
All right, and now from the West Gallery, we have Michelle Kasky of Bloomberg News. Michelle.
Hey, Jano. So you talked about how you anticipate that the legal decisions will come in time in order to start congestion pricing, but there's still, even if you get the rulings that you want, there's still the risk of, there's potential for appeals to these rulings. So since you're saying there isn't a plan B, why isn't there a plan B? Because this is very real that this money is at risk. And what are you hearing from up in Albany, the governor and the legislature, in terms of are they aware that they may need to be called upon to come up with Plan B?
Okay. So the reason there isn't a Plan B is because this is what the legislature said is the funding for our capital program, and there's no universe where the legislature has $15 billion to come up with, on a dime or just on the double to replace this. So that ain't happening. That's why it is as serious as we have tried to convey, because we're shutting the capital program down in effect. That's why we're trying to make sure everyone understands the consequence. So what was the other question?
So what are you hearing, when you're talking with the governor, the governor's people, the legislature, are they aware of just how serious this could be?
Yes.
And
in answer to your question, if we get favorable reviews, outcomes at the district court level, both New York and New Jersey, we don't anticipate holding off with congestion pricing until every appeal is exhausted, because again, that would, I think, give us very strong confidence that the system is ready to go.
And we move on to Steve Nesson right there from WNYC Gothamist and the Gusa Nesson newsletter. Steve, good afternoon.
Hello, Chair. On the subway safety tip, there were 3 murders this year. As you know, there have been 32 since 2020, and that's more than the combined previous 15 years. And this is with the recent murders, or with the surge in police. I know subways don't breed crime, but what can you do to reassure riders and what can you do to create a safer environment? I've heard a lot of blame of bail reform, but what can the MTA do?
Well, no, I just want to be clear. There's no blame of any particular aspect of the criminal justice system or laws or anything. I think that what we're saying is just factually, when we see a lot of the crime that has been experienced by our riders being done by people who have huge, a huge record of doing exactly the same types of crimes, we're asking the criminal justice system, and there are a lot of different stakeholders, to figure that out so that our riders don't face that. 1% of the arrestees last year committed 22% of the crimes. It's a lot. Means they're committing 22 times their number in terms of crime. So you can really put a dent in crime by figuring out how to deal with the issue of folks who are doing this repetitively in the system. That's the point that we're making. And I think it kind of goes to your bigger point, which is what is our strategy for dealing with subway crime. I just remind you, so we don't forget, subway crime represents, I think, 1% of crime in the city of New York. We have, on average, last year we had 6 felony crimes a day in a ridership of 4 million. It's the population of the city of Los Angeles, 6 felony crimes a day. This is not a crazy, out-of-control place. However, it is a place where people do feel vulnerable. And it's a public space that needs to feel safe as well as being safe. And that's why we put such emphasis on working with the NYPD to make sure that everything about the system makes people feel safe. So I'm not going to argue about the statistics. I'm just saying that we need to push back on both the reality and the perception of crime, and that's why we work with the NYPD so much. I'm very proud of that partnership.
All right, thank you. You have another?
Squeeze in one small one on congestion pricing that hasn't been spoken about yet.
Okay, sure.
The environmental assessment did note that regarding parking outside of the CBD, it could exceed supply if the area is currently at or over capacity. Upper West Side, Washington Heights, I've spoken with some residents who are very concerned it's already at capacity or over capacity. So what do you tell those residents in the area and lawmakers that are fielding concerns from constituents about parking issues that they think will be exacerbated with congestion pricing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, the big punchline of the environmental assessment was no significant impact. So every one of the impacts that was identified in the environmental process was not considered to be significant enough to warrant a required action by the feds or to prevent congestion pricing from going forward. Obviously, we're going to look closely at whether there are impacts and try to work with communities when we see those. That's why we have so many reporting requirements. But you might equally hope that the folks who are electing to park uptown will take mass transit from the get-go. So we'll see what happens. But we're going to look closely at that. We want this to be a net success for everybody.
All right, thanks, Jano, Rich, Jamie, Kathy, and Demetrius Critchlow. Thanks to everybody, and good afternoon from Lower Manhattan.